our community are sacred and must be treated with dignity and respect. We value excellence in Catholic education, guided by shared responsibility as shepherds and the moral authority of the Church. And with that, I'll call our meeting to order and turn to Trustee Ivanelli to open us in prayer and with our acknowledgement. Trustee Ivanelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In anticipation of the fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time, we come together as a people loved and chosen by God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Let us listen to these words from the Gospel of Mark. The disciples went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Just then there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing the man and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once, Jesus' fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. Please join in our gathering prayer. Loving God, you desire to be the Lord of our lives and to set our spirits free. Continue to open our hearts to the scriptures and to the voice of Christ, that we may learn from his teachings and dedicate ourselves to your loving service. May we lead the life to which we have been called, supporting one another in faith and bearing witness to the truth with unhindered devotion. Encourage staff, students, and their families on their spiritual journeys and help them to encounter Christ in their day-to-day living. May they put all of their trust in you, striving to know your presence and follow your ways. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And the land acknowledgement. The Creator gifted us with this land that we are blessed to share and care for together. The Calgary Catholic School District acknowledges that the land we gather on, Mukitstis, is the ancestral territory of the Siksiyai-Sitsapi, the Siksika, Gayina, Pigani, Amska-Pipigani. We acknowledge all the Treaty 7 signatories, including the Tsutsina people, as well as the Eyahe Nakota nations, Bearspaw, Chikini, and Wesley. This land is also the home of Métis Nation Region 3 and all other people who make their home here.
And thank you for that. Before we begin with the content of the meeting, just a couple of quick updates. This is going to be a heck of a busy meeting. As you know, we're contemplating potential school closures. We will have guests, I can bet, who will be wanting to be part of this meeting. And so a couple of things related to that. We will do a hard stop at 3 o'clock or 5 to 3, regardless of where we are, to make sure that we can start the public piece on time, to be fair to them. The other piece as well is I will be reading a bit of a preamble at the beginning of the public meeting after the prayer and territorial acknowledgement, so that it's clear to participants that there is not an opportunity for participation via the chat room. We did have a minor amount at the last meeting, and this because this is coming up is going to be important that we make very clear to them what their avenues for participation through presentations, if they want to make one to the board, will be. And to that end, the chat room will be disabled during the meeting, and it'll also allow trustees to focus
Mary,
on.
we're still in public.
Oh, thank you for that, Cheryl. But we will be disabling the chat in any case. so that our guests, and we'll apprise our guests of what they will need to do should they want to make a presentation. And I think that was all that I had for small pieces of information that you will need to know. With that, if I could have a motion to move in private.
Madam Chair, before I move in private, are we going to approve the agenda?
Oh my goodness, hang on just a sec. Let's go back here. Yes, we can. Well, approval of agenda, consent agenda. I've had no contact from trustees wanting to pull anything from the consent agenda. So with that, Trustee Woman.
I believe Trustee Rapp is going to move.
Okay, Trustee Rapp.
Thank you. I move that the board. I move that the board. I'm sorry, I lost my sheet. That the board
approves the agenda
approves the agenda as
presented.
Thank you.
Okay,
All those in favor?
It. I think that came this morning.
Thanks. Any opposed? Great. Now, if I could have a motion to move in private.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees moves to meet in private.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm just having a hard time going back and forth between my camera. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right.
The Holy Gospel of Mark. Jesus began to teach beside the sea. Such a large crowd gathered around him that he got into a boat on the water and sat there, while the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. He began to teach them many things in parables, and in his teaching he said to them, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on rocky ground, where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly, since it had no depth of soil. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. Other seed fell into good soil, and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And he said, "Let anyone with ears to hear listen." Please join in our gathering prayer. Lord God, you call us to be in relationship with you and with others. Continue to plant and nourish your world in our hearts, that we may grow strong in faith and respond with care and concern to the needs of others. Let us see and take advantage of the opportunities you place on our path to share the good news of your love and in our daily work. Bless our words and actions, that we may guide others to you and give witness to your Son by lives built on faith, hope, and love. Cultivate the hearts of staff, students, and their families, that they may welcome your words of truth and grow in understanding. Together, may they grow in peace and unity and produce good fruits in their lives through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Apparently, my volume is low. Is that correct?
You've corrected it. It's good now from my perspective, Trustee Ivanelli.
Okay, thank you, because I've got it as loud as I can. I'll just share the land acknowledgement. The Creator gifted us with this land that we are blessed to share and care for together. The Calgary Catholic School District acknowledges that the land we gather on, Mohkinstsis, is the ancestral territory of the Siksiyai Sitapi, the Siksaka, Gayena, Piikani, and Amskapi Piikani. We acknowledge all the Treaty 7 signatories, including the Tsuut'ina, as well as the Eyahe Nakota Nations, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley. This land is also the home of Métis Nation Region 3 and all other people who make their home here.
And thank you for that, Trustee Ivanelli. And before we move on with the business and with item number 6, which would be our acceptance review of accountability reports, just a reminder that our regular board meetings are open to the public. Members of the public are welcome to observe the discussions and deliberations of their elected representatives. There is, however, no opportunity during a meeting of the board for unscheduled input from observing members of those who have taken the time to be present today. And to those who have come into our meeting, welcome. And with that, I will move on with item 6, presentation and review of accountability report. 6.1, accountability report, faith leadership. And as you know, this is our second pass at this accountability report. You've seen the edits and additions that were requested of the board. At this point, I will open it up to board for any commentary. And knowing that there were very few edits requested at our last meeting, if there is no further input requested on this, is a trustee prepared to make a motion? Oh, Trustee Williams, you're muted.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yes, I would like to make a motion. And that would be that the Board of Trustees, based on the evidence provided in the Faith Leadership Accountability Report, determines that the following quality indicators have been met relative to the current evaluation period. QI 1.1 ensures liturgical calendar and a comprehensive set of related classroom activities, as well as support for corresponding liturgical celebrations are provided to each school that ensures that regular liturgical, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with that word, celebrations are held in each school throughout the actual school year. QI 1.2, ensure students and staff are provided with and engaged in opportunities for spiritual development, including but not limited to knowledge of the sacraments. QI 1.3, ensure appropriate and meaningful social justice initiatives are occurring in each school. Provides evidence that a positive relationship is built and maintained between the bishop and his office, the chief superintendent, and the district.
Thank you for that. The motion's on the floor. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that motion is carried. And that will move us to item 6.2, accountability report, personnel management. And again, I will turn to Chief Superintendent Zoomless to introduce this. This is the first time that this report's coming to us.
Thank you, Chair Martin. And just before I dive into this one, I want to say a huge thanks to Director of Catholicity, Mr. John Wash, and his team for all of the awesome work that they put into the previous report that was just approved. Moving right along into agenda item 6.2, I want to begin by thanking Superintendent Andrea Haloka, as well as Superintendent Naren Kishishandani, who share the responsibility of looking after our human resource department. And that compromises the bulk of today's report that you're going to be hearing of. And I would like to invite Superintendent Haloka to take us on a tour through this accountability report, since this is the very first reading of it. So over to you, Superintendent Haloka.
Thank you, Dr. Zoomless. So this is the accountability report and personnel management that covers quite a few of the QIs within section 5. And so just going through the first one, QI 5.1, it talks about developing and implementing quality recruitment, orientation, and staff development. So you'll see in this part of the report, we talk a lot about the recruitment activities the board does, and then provide some statistics with respect to the hiring summary we have in our different employee groups and the different ways we attract and recruit employees to our district. We also talk about absence and position management. We talk about our absence management team and the amount of retirements we've had in our different groups in this past year. Under the topic of orientation staff development, we speak to a few items that really help with our new employees, our new employee orientation that occurs for all of our employees within the district. The fact that we brought this into a digital version because of COVID last year, and that this has actually changed our practice to do all of these orientations in a digital manner. So that has been a very positive step for the district. We talk about the new educator workshop and the significant work done last year in this area, as well as just the district's overall commitment to professional growth. And of course, we have a QI specifically speaking to that. And we also speak to Ask, which is our enterprise action service and knowledge portal that began actually last September. And HR having a significant presence on the portal, as well as other business units within our central office team. And that's a really excellent place for our employees to gather information, as well as some knowledge articles that help with their professional growth. And specifically on that, we do have our repository of employee wellness articles, which have really been built up over the last year and well utilized, which align nicely with our district priority of wellness. We also talk about our OH&S training. So that's pretty significant. And of course, that's managed by Superintendent McDonald's department. And we talk about the use of Public School Works, which is the digital training program we use to facilitate training in the area of OH&S in different areas. But we've also been able to use that portal for other types of training. So for example, we do training on child abuse. This year it's been really important for us to roll out information on communicable diseases. And after last year's change to the legislation on EpiPens, and we now have that as a mandated training within that section. We talk a little bit about the support we provide our employees. So we have something called a PD fund, and that fund specifically supports our employees who are not teachers to engage in professional development. And the district puts aside just over $85,000 a year. And that is completely used up by the end of the year for employees who wish to engage in professional growth activities. We also provide professional growth for our central office personnel through snack and shares that occur in person and now online. And that just allows for those that work in central office to understand the workings of the district. And then we talk a little bit about the support staff professional growth we provide. So last year and in past years, we've provided dinner series for our support staff, particularly our education assistants, to learn more about different ways to support our students. And we've also provided different ways to give them professional growth, such as our Professional Growth Day. We started that as a joint day for all of our support staff last year. And this year, of course, moving that to online and very well received, as you can see by the feedback. We also provide an overview of the professional growth activities we have for our accounting, business management, and IT personnel. And actually what they provide to the field as well, so that they are helping out with the professional growth of employees that do that really important work within our district. We then move into QI 5.3, and this one really talks about fostering high standards of instruction and professional improvement specific to our teachers. So it talks about upholding what is in the TQS. So we get into a few ways we support with that, one being sabbaticals, which we already brought to you that this year we have 10 full-time teachers approved and 2 part-time for next year's sabbaticals. We are just meeting to provide professional improvement funding for people that have applied this year, but last year we can certainly let you know that we provided almost $200,000 to our teachers and administrators who were engaging in professional development and growth. Which is really exciting and also necessary for our district to make sure we have people in positions such as administration and guidance and counseling. We also talk a little bit here about the professional growth opportunities that we have and different ways we provide it on different types of sessions. And then we get into different topics that we provide different growth areas in. And last year, these will ring true to our trustees. We provided a lot of focus on neuroscience, concept-based pedagogy, and then getting in some of the other pieces that we're currently working on as well, which is the Indigenous, the cultural and inclusive communities, as well as our Catholic community of caring, racial justice, and online delivery. We then move into talking a little bit about our new educator workshop series and new faith formation, as well as new teacher orientation for our from our learning services team. So this is just a really way to help our new teachers become oriented to the workings of our district and some of the foundational knowledge we expect them to have, and really set them up for success for their careers as they move forward. We talk a little bit about the diverse learning team and the supports we provide there, particularly to our staff who work in our more complicated programs. And that is partially done through our student early dismissal program, which has been very successful in providing that support to both our teachers and our support staff who work with those students. We also give an overview of our Indigenous professional growth, some of the development we've done for our teachers in the area of English language learning. And you'll see in that there was quite a bit of uptake on that. Over 800 teachers participated in professional development in the area of ELL in the spring last year, when they were able to engage in a little bit more professional growth because of moving to online learning. We then move into QI 5.4, which really talks about training for administrators and building leadership capacity within the district. And there's a lot of ways that we accomplish that, and we do provide just sort of an overview of all the different ways that we provide that support for our leaders in our district. Then we provide a little bit more detail about things such as our principal mentorship program, which is very robust for our principals coming in new to the principalship in their first and second years. We talk a little bit about the faith formation for leadership, but also give a nod to the fact you've already learned about that through the Faith Leadership Accountability Report as well. We then get into 5.6, which talks about ensuring compensation criteria are in place to ensure qualified staff are attracted and retrained and reflect market values. So in this section, what we show is the way that exempt and unifor staff can actually ask for a job evaluation or classification review. There's a process for that, and part of that is to make sure they understand that they are being compensated as per market factors, and if not, that can be rectified. We also provide information about their compensation, and those are all linked to different places within the internet, and of course found on the Ask portal for any employee who is looking for that information. We also give information about the retirement sessions we've provided, and we do demonstrate to you the district turnover rate. And so you can see within that, I know this was mentioned last year as well, that we do have the resignation rate has gone up over the last couple of years. And that is completely a reflection on the economy within Calgary, showing that we do have people whose lack of employment by their spouse are leading them away from Calgary. So it's gone up slightly over the last couple of years. The employee group relations, we just talk about the different ways that we work with our labor relations groups, and we support really very positive relationships with our different union groups. And we demonstrate a few examples below. And then we speak about how we go about employee evaluations, both for teachers, our exempt and unifor staff, as well as administration. And we do provide the links to the documentation that is used for those evaluations and the standards used to measure our employees against. We then get into attendance monitoring and talk about that, giving an overview of the process and also linking to our AP on attendance monitoring. And then we speak to absence management. So the table that's on page 11, where we talk about salary costs to support absenteeism, we do give you an overview of the past 2 years as well as to the end of December of this year. And it's just an interesting trend when you look at guest teachers in particular. So 2 years ago, the cost to support guest teachers was about 9.5 million. Last year went down to 6.285 million. And as you can imagine, that is the result of not having to support guest teachers from March until the end of June. And so that is the reason for the decrease. Now come this year, when you extrapolate the information for the first 4 months to see what it would be for the full year, if we continue on pace, we would actually be right back at 9.5 million. So that's where we're sitting. And I think, you know, we were interested to see where we would be sitting in that, because we know due to COVID, we've probably had increased absences, but also we have had increased classes and students being sent home because of COVID isolation. So that's probably balanced it actually out to where we have been in past years. The average absence rate, we just give you the reasons for absences just to help frame the information in the tables to follow. And you can see for the absence rates here, we do provide the information over the past 2 years, as well as thus far this year. And you can see the overall daily rate of absenteeism has 2 years ago, it was at 5.34% overall. And last year was at 4.33% overall, again, decreasing likely because of the last 4 months of the school year. And then you can see for this year so far, we are at 6.55. So it has gone up. Again, a lot of that as a result of COVID, and some of that coming due to isolation and some due to illness itself. So that does bring our rate up a little bit this year, which is probably something we could all predict have happened. Page 13, we talk about our discrimination, harassment, violence, and bullying in the workplace. The AP that we do have in place for that, and really wanting to make sure all of our staff feel that they are in warm, caring, respectful, and safe environments that respect diversity and foster a sense of belonging. So we do share with you that within the past school year, 6 complaints were filed, and of these, 3 were found to have no merit. 1 was found to have merit, 1 was withdrawn, and 1 was not investigated as the district had no jurisdiction over the matter, and all of those files have since closed. For investigations, we give you an overview of the investigations that we have. 19 investigations that occurred last year, and the result of these ranged from letters of discipline to restitution to termination. We then give you basically just an overview of the progressive discipline, and that basically the steps that gradually increase in severity as an employee progress through the steps, starts with the letter of counsel and could end in moving to dismissal. We also provide you just what has occurred last year with our grievances. And these are grievances that come out of things that are brought up in the collective agreement that people believe are contravening what is in the agreement. So of this, you can see there are very few grievances, and those that did occur last year, most of them have been resolved, but we have 1 still ongoing at the ATA and 2 with QP. Moving to page 14, where we talk about 5.8. So this is talking about providing a welcome, caring, and safe working environment, which includes employee wellness and employee and family assistance programs. The first thing we point out is the many ways we recognize our employees, and we just give a summary of this from last year. We then talk a little bit about our wellness plan that we rolled out last year in support of our board priority of employee wellness. And we do provide just an overview of what that plan looks like. And then we give you, again, a reminder of what our EFAP program looks like and the different types of supports we provide to our employees and their families. We then move into 5.9, which really, again, talks to the work of Brad McDonald's department, that they do implement the requirements of OH&S legislation and maintain the core compliance. And so we can see within that, this section, they really talk about the manuals, procedures, and programs they put in place in order to ensure that compliance. And then the work that they do, which is very significant to support the audits that occur within our district during the school year. And lastly, in that section, they provide a series of information just to show the work that they do to support all of this, which is, again, very extensive amount of work to ensure our district is a safe place for our employees to work. Then lastly, in 5.10, we talk about ensuring all collective agreements and contracts are being administered and interpreted properly, so staff and contracted personnel are being paid appropriately and deducted appropriately. So a lot of this has already actually been covered in 5.6, but what we do add here is the pay schedules just to demonstrate that we are compliant with that. So with all that information, we can then move to our identified strengths, which we highlight in 3 different areas. One of them is staff wellness, and we do talk a bit about our EFAP sessions, our celebration recognizing of employees, making sure that our district faith theme really comes alive in our communities, and ensuring that we are able to maintain our core registration and that we do pass our internal and external audits, and making sure that we are compliant in all ways that have to do with OH&S. We also show that we do have a strength in professional growth, that we really have worked to align our growth with board priorities and last year's focus on neuroscience and mentorship. And then, of course, making sure that we have a safe and welcoming place for all of our employees to work. We also then show that we just really focus on supporting strong curriculum delivery, and with a focus particularly recently pivoting from in-person to online and back to in-person learning. And lastly is the use of technology. Talking a lot about the systems we use. We have become very digital in the world of HR, and talking a little bit about the work we've done there. The use of data to determine areas of need for places where we need to support our teachers and staff for professional growth. The use of Ask, which is a new program that came alive last year in the district and is very highly utilized. And then just making sure that we continue our development of systems between HR and IT to ensure that these programs remain operationally sound and effective. We then move into, on page 18, our administrative issues and improvement strategies. And there we talk about, there were 3 past administrative issues listed in last year's report. And one that was brought forward was that budget reductions could relate to have an impact on recruitment. So the strategies that were utilized were to make sure our recruitment process involved reduced travel and incorporated online interviews, which actually coincided really well with moving to COVID, in which we wanted to maintain physical distancing whenever possible anyways. We also adjusted our staffing allocations and calendars to account for budget decision-making timelines. We also had as an administrative issue, just making sure we stay on top of OH&S legislative changes and employment standards. And our strategy was really to just make sure we are complying with them. So again, that is the massive work of our OH&S teams department to really comply with all of the requirements and to adapt any APs that need to assure that compliance occurs. And then finally, professional growth to foster high standards of instruction. So providing professional growth on topics related to the various areas of diverse learning, ELL, Indigenous wellness, and faith formation. And then the support that we give to our teachers, education assistants, to our learning support team, DDLTs, family support workers, and our counselors. Then we just highlight for you administrative issues that we are focusing on moving forward. So certainly the OH&S presenting needs that are related to the pandemic. And the strategy for that was to put together our pandemic committee very quickly, which was done so by Dr. Zumlis, and made sure that we are health and safety compliant to every decision made in the pandemic moving forward. Managing the pivot to and from in-person and online learning. And again, that was a huge support of technology through IT, making sure that we have parent-formed topics to represent that, and assisting in assessing areas of need by surveying our staff and our parents to make sure that as we go through this new way of learning, that their needs are heard and that we can meet their needs. Staffing and opening online schools was a tremendous administrative issue to tackle, but through the immense work between all of our business units and of course the schools themselves, getting our 2 online schools up and running for the fall, included the work of HR online staffing cycles in the fall, and a new online teaching evaluation guide to support evaluating our teachers who are now working online. Employee wellness and leaves management during the pandemic has been also an administrative issue we identify. We are definitely working hard on this employee wellness piece. We started with our PG Day in December and are continuing to move that forward with monthly and weekly reminders of the work. And continuing wellness PG days and offerings and individual and community care plans so that everybody feels like they're receiving the support they need to put their own wellness as well as the community wellness at the forefront. And then finally, guest teacher coverage does continue to be an administrative issue. And a big boost for that was the funding that was provided through the federal funding that is being used to help support that area. Then lastly, we get to generative governance considerations. And so these are suggestions that we would see our trustees supporting in different areas. So one of the advocacy areas is strategic priorities. And we do anticipate that the trustees will continue to provide us with those priorities for the board, from the board for administration to work at bringing alive within our district. Having representation from trustees on the TIBA for TIBA to make sure that we can have fair and equitable collective agreements, and that the board's eye and voice is on that piece. Of course, always sharing the good news about Calgary Catholic and the Catholic faith. And that is obviously done by maintaining contact with stakeholders and being representative, of course, to show that Catholic education is valued. And then lastly, making sure that our trustees have an awareness of human resource practices and procedures. And this year, definitely through Dr. Zoomless's leadership, making sure there are regular updates on HR practices and issues, and making sure there's a strong professional workforce at the end of all of this to ensure optimal student learning occurs. And so with that report, we do believe that there is enough information provided to meet the quality indicators provided. And then, as always, at the end is a handy list of acronyms to assist.
And thank you for that, Superintendent Holoka. At this point, I'll turn it over to the Board of Trustees. If there's questions of clarification, information that you would like to see that's not there. I have Trustee Wellman, Trustee Rath. Trustee Avenelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One is, first of all, just a clarification on the very first page of the QI 5.1 in regards to the recruiting. Was that all the job fairs were, is it meant to be in the Calgary area or in Calgary, or did you mean Alberta?
Through the Chief.
I will defer this one to Superintendent Holoka.
Just sort of trying to pinpoint where you are seeing this.
Okay. So it's QI 5.1, page 1 of 20.
Yes.
As quality recruitment, it's the third statement where you talk about the presence at job fairs. Was it in Alberta, or it says all in the Calgary do. So I'm not sure if you meant in the province or actually in Calgary or the Calgary area.
Thank you for clarifying and for catching a typo. So I think if you remove the word "the," that would make the most sense. I think what we're demonstrating there is that we are present at all 4 job fairs in Calgary, and we did not travel to other areas to do our recruiting due to budget constraints, but also because of COVID.
Okay. All right, thank you. And just an observation on page, it would be page 2 of 20. All of the information for the period September 1 to December 18 of 2020 was cut off.
Okay.
So don't know what it is. So hopefully in the next go round, we'll see what's supposed to be under there. And on page 3 of 20, under new employee orientation, it did say that there were a bunch of videos that were launched and replaced the in-person orientations. We all know that's because of COVID. But is that something, like, I'm just wondering, out of the things that we're doing last year and this year, where we had always done things face to face, and some things we're, doing online, and then when we can, we go back to in person. But if we found deficiencies and some areas that are more effective, and re-looking at actually what we're doing even outside of COVID, where we may continue some of the things that we're doing now, and would this be one of them?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in response to Trustee Wellman's question, with crisis comes opportunity. And I think that there have been many opportunities through COVID-19 for us to look upon our practices. And yes, some of these efficiencies are ones that we will want to continue when we come out of COVID, but it's on a case-by-case basis. And I always like to think of a pendulum. So on one side of the pendulum, we're doing everything face-to-face. On the other side of the pendulum, we're doing everything in the virtual world. And I think the best scenario is somewhere in the middle, with a combination of face-to-face orientations combined with online support.
Okay, thank you. And on page 10 to 20 under employee group relations.
Okay, Trustee Wellman, sorry, last question. I'll move on and come back to you.
Okay.
Thanks for this question.
Okay, so under employee group relations, in the first paragraph, last sentence, it says each committee meets every 2 months if required by either party. I think it would be really helpful to have a schedule of those meetings. I think relationships are really, really important, and you only build those relationships by having open door communications. So I would fear that if somebody didn't request a meeting, that there was just nothing happening. So I just think that would be valuable information. And then, Madam Chair, I'll come back if nobody else answers.
Thank you. I've got a few in the queue. I've got trustees Rath, Ivanelli, Williams, D'Souza, and trustee Lowe. Okay, and then I'll come back to you following trustee Lowe.
Virtually everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly a lot of evidence in this report. So thank you for that. I was wondering if you can answer a couple questions on page 9, QI 5.6. And I was curious, you talked about the resignation rate, but I was wondering about the retirement rate. And how much that's changed given the program where we've offered early retirement from last year to this year, and if you knew if that was much of a change.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in response to Trustee Rath's question, last year we were sitting roughly with 100 people taking part of the early retirement incentive. And this year we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 individuals. And so we suspect more people will retire from now until the end of the year, but unfortunately they will not be able to take part of the early retirement package that we had out earlier, or not really package, but incentive. And so we are seeing a decrease this year in comparison to last year. It's also important to note that last year we did have 2 offerings of it, but in our second offering, we believe there's only like 8 people that took it up. So we didn't do the second offering this year.
Great, thank you. I have one more question, if that's okay. I was wondering in this same QI, I was wondering why guest teachers are included in the turnover rate.
For this one, I will defer to Superintendent Holoka.
Yeah, it's just a statistic we can provide because we just take a list of all of our active employees, and we need to include our guest teachers in our complete list of employees. I think it's also important to include them because it does demonstrate how robust we are as a district as far as our complete amount of roster. If we did lose a lot of guest teachers in a particular year, it would probably show up on here, but they would probably be very consistent with the reflections that are in all of our employee groups as far as those that are retiring or moving away.
Then I have trustee Ivanelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is around QI 5.1 and the implementation of quality recruitment. So as we all know, budget and pandemic are proving to be immense challenges for the district. How can the district ensure that we are hiring the very best qualified teachers? According to the report, the interviews are now conducted online, and budget constraints allow for recruitment to only take place in Calgary. Education will become a more competitive field with an increase in the number of charter schools and a decrease in some of our own programs due to the funding framework and tighter budgets. So what is being done to ensure that we can compete with these factors to attract quality recruitment and ensure quality education?
Through the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in response to Trustee Ivanelli's question, our human resource team, they still take a very active role in forming relationships with universities within Alberta and abroad. And even though COVID has changed the face-to-face interview process, we still rely upon Zoom as well as Microsoft Teams. We take pride in hiring some of the best teachers to help us achieve the board priorities, and some of the best teachers as of late have been coming from St. Mary's University College and other places. And so I think we're in good shape, and we continue to look at our practices, not only for teachers, but how we hire principals and other administrators. And I know in the upcoming months, as we move into the hiring of principals, we're really excited that we will be launching a new process going forward. So more to come on that. But you bring forward a really good point. There are some challenges because the world has changed due to COVID-19, and we're adapting the best we can.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just to follow up as an example, there was reference made to the Spanish teachers, but what is happening with our FLA teachers and their recruitment?
We know that in the past years, the recruitment of French teachers, not only within Calgary Catholic, but across Canada, was a challenge. At present, we are actually fairly healthy when it comes to filling the French positions that we have within Calgary Catholic. And so we've been targeting that area and hiring appropriately. And Superintendent Holoka, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do continue to have great people wanting to work at Calgary Catholic. So I think it's really important to note we are a desirable employer. We know that when we put up ads for hiring, they get scraped by all of the top sort of online job ads like monster.com and all that. They lift all of our positions because people really do want to apply to Calgary Catholic. So we have not been in a position where we are lacking French immersion teachers. Many of them are French immersion teachers that are raised and grown in Calgary Catholic and want to come back and teach within our district. So, and then we definitely are open and actively recruiting teachers from outside of our city and our province as well all the time. And when necessary, we definitely work with those within learning services who have this expertise just to make sure they have the language competencies and so on. So I totally appreciate the desire and concern to make sure we have employees that are good and solid and experienced and ready to come to our school district. But so far, we are in really good shape we're flush with people who want to come and work for us.
Thank you. I have Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have 8 questions, but I'm only going to ask 3 right now, and I think they're going to be pretty easy to answer, and then I'll give it back to you. So the first one is on page 1, and it speaks to our teachers we having teachers that come from Spain. Do we coexist with that? Do we send teachers over there when they send teachers here? Because I know with some programs, it's a dual thing. Like the teachers will come here from Spain and replace our teachers that we have. Do we do the same thing? Do our teachers go to Spain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to this question, no, it's just a one way where we receive Spanish teachers. Now, in light of COVID-19 and some of the border restrictions and everything that's going on, there's still lots up in the air. And we know with COVID-19, things change minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. So there's still a lot of unknowns around our Spanish recruitment as we go forward, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you for that. My second question is on page 2. And I just want some clarity because you've posted applications, interviews, new hires, returning. And I just would like to understand, you have 500 plus applications in ATA, and then you go across the line. I'm not going to repeat them all. But then I'm looking at interviews, and you interview maybe half of them, and then it's new hires. So like, how does that system work? Like, you get 500, so obviously you must call the applicants. And the interviews, do you get through all of them, or do you just say, okay, fine, we've got what we need, and we'll go forward from there? Like, I'm just trying to understand how these numbers work.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So people who want to work for Calgary Catholic, they actually apply online. And there are several documents that are required to have a complete application. So if we were to look at the ATA with 530 plus applications, some may not move to the interview stage for a variety of reasons. It could be not all of their information is included in their application, and so we're not going to move forward with interviewing them. We also know to work in a Catholic school district that one of the required documents is a pastoral reference form. When we look at the people we are interviewing, we're also looking at the need. And so based upon how many openings and vacancies we have within our organization determines how many people that we're going to expend the time on interviewing. And we always shortlist. So we look at a package, we look at an application, and we may have someone applying that may not have great marks. We may not want to, or great references, then we may not want to waste the time to move them forward to the next stage of the process, the interview. So it's a really fluid process, but it's a good one, and I have great confidence in it.
Great, and I thank you for that, knowing the amount of staff we have within Calgary Catholic. My last question at this point is on the bottom of page 3. It speaks to the Ask repository, and knowing the number of staff that we have, I've got a question, since it says, and we have received 309 views. Well, we have over 5,000 staff, so I'm kind of wondering why it's not being used more.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And in response of Trustees Williams' question, the Ask portal is a brilliant initiative, one that was led up by Director Andrea Urquhart. One, give her great kudos and credits to. If you look at the word ask, it's broken down into action, service, and then knowledge. So a knowledge article is, and that's what the last paragraph is focused on, is a person may be asking the same question, and it could be a question about, I'm pregnant, what kind of benefits could I have during pregnancy? And so a little knowledge article is created about that topic, and then an employee, if they enter that question into the system, then that knowledge article would pop out. That's just one of the 3 components of Ask. I think the real gem lies in the service and the action, and so there's so many other things, like, for example, if one of our employees wants to apply for a mortgage, a typical mortgage application requires proof of employment and what your salary is. They can enter it via the computer through the Ask portal, and within minutes, they will have a computer-generated letter that they can provide to the bank. So Ask in itself has lots of great merit. When it comes to the knowledge component of it and these articles, that number of 309 actually is a pretty significant number, because just think that's 309 less phone calls that need to be answered to answer a question online where it's answered now digitally.
I guess that's my question, though. Given the number of staff we have, and given this portal and the wealth of information that's there, I guess I'm kind of wondering, does everybody know about this? Like, have they been made aware of this? Because I'm thinking this is a great place for our staffs to go. And I've got to say, when I see 309, I'm not thinking it's being used to its potential, I guess is where I was going with that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with Trustee Williams in that we have to keep in mind that this has been, the Ask portal has only been around for just over a year. There's still lots of work to be done, and we just migrated to our new website as well, right? And so it's fitting all the pieces together, and I know Superintendent Haloka and her team, as well as the entire administrative team, we need to work harder at bringing awareness to this functionality, and that's part of our work, and so that's the work that lies ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zumlis.
Thank you. I have Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to first start by saying thank you, Superintendent Haloka, for an outstanding presentation. It was excellent. And I really liked the format of this whole document. It was very easy to read and comprehend. So thank you for doing a great job. I'd like to follow up on some of the questions that have already been asked regarding QI 5.1, and specifically in regards to recruitment. We have in the past gone outside the city and outside the province and outside the country to recruit our French and Spanish instructors, which we've done an outstanding job with. I'm wondering if you have any plans, considering that now we've got going to be having a strategy on racial justice. If we're going to be recruiting people from the demographic that's reflected in the city and reflected in our schools now, so our students have role models in leadership positions.
Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The answer is yes. I know that I've publicly said in the past, and I'll say it again today, that when we look at our principals, we have 118 principals and we don't have one Black principal. And so what we're doing is, and I think it's really important that students have role models of all colors, right? And so we hire the best candidate based upon their knowledge, their skills, their ability, not specifically their color, but if all things are equal and we have a person of color in competition with another individual, definitely we're looking at district need. Like, what is the district need? And the district need is to have that role model. And so, you know, we would make that decision. So it is something that's on our radar. We are working it through. And, you know, one of the harsh realities too is that we don't have we're encouraging more of our Black students in our high schools. I think this is part of the work now and in the future to consider becoming teachers. Like, we need more people to apply and to, you know, to come back to us. And so that's the work that we're doing now, and the wonderful work of Holly Sheely and her committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, certainly this is a lengthy report of 20 pages with a lot of information and, you know, certainly a lot of things going on. But I'm going to go back to my work as a trustee now is I want definitive evidence that these QIs have been met. So what I find is I have a lot of information in the report, which I could infer evidence from, but it's not clear evidence and definitive evidence that some of these things are being met. I'm not saying that they're not happening, but when I pick up this report, I need to be able to look at it and say, yes, here's the evidence. So let me give you specific examples. I'll go to the first QI in quality recruitment, orientation, staff development. Trustee Ivanelli asked a question and Superintendent Holoka response was evidence, but it's not in this report. It was the evidence about we're being scraped by some of the top recruiting agencies. We have we're flush with people who want to work with Calgary Catholic. So it's not like we're getting one applicant and that's the person. So quality recruitment is occurring because of these evidential things, but I don't see that in the report. And I'm just going to give a few examples here. The new employee orientation. So yes, we did videos. Okay, we did videos, but how is that evidence that you have staff development? How many people viewed those videos? What were the takeaways from those? What was the uptake on them? What were the outcomes from viewing those videos? On the ask, so Trustee Williams was kind of going here. We talk about this ask app software portal, but what is the evidence that people are using it? What's coming out of it? How do we know that it is supporting our staff? How do we know as a board that this is meeting the needs? I don't see the evidence there. So I'm not saying that it's not there if I read between the lines and if I listen to the information that I'm responded to when we ask our questions. But for me, as a trustee saying, did you meet this QI? I need to be able to have measurable evidence and definitive evidence in a concise report.
Just to be clear before I turn it to the chief, then what you're saying is that you're seeing that the evidence is inferred but not explicitly linked, and you're looking for that?
Yeah, well, I'm going, so when Superintendent Holoka, sometimes in the presentation or answering the questions, we're getting very specific evidence. But in the report, I'm not seeing those pieces of evidence articulated to the board. So I could infer through this that it's successful, but take ask, for example, what evidence here says that this is actually meeting the need or has success or has a measurable outcome that would say this is supporting staff orientation and development, which is the QI that it is under. And I know I'm a broken record on this because I bring it up every time we have, but I think it's important that we need to be very concise so that there isn't reading between the lines and saying, yeah, that's what I'm inferring from the information.
Thank you. To the chief.
Thank you, Chair Martin, and I appreciate your comments, Trustee Lowe. And this is the first reading of this accountability pillar report, so we can definitely go back to the drawing board if that's the will of the board to provide that explicit, measurable conciseness that you've mentioned today.
I have Trustee Wellman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one last question that I really wanted to ask administration has to do with page 11 of 20. And certainly Superintendent Holoka spoke to the anomalies with COVID-19 and, our costs for absenteeism. That being stated, because we know that a lot of our staff have had to self-isolate and perhaps sick because of COVID and not actually being able to work and then collecting sick pay. Have we isolated that information in any way, shape, or form so that on a go-forward basis, when we're trying to do year-over-year comparisons, we have, I guess, comparable information and we're looking at apples and apples and not apples and oranges because of an anomaly with COVID?
Thank you, Chair Martin. And in response to Trustee Wellman's question, I believe if you look on page 12 of the report and you look at the chart, in the uncontrollable section or column under the 2020-2021 data, you will see a significant increase of 3.18 uncontrollable absences. And those would be things like being quarantined. And if you look at that number, it is significantly higher, keeping in mind this is only until the end of December, December 31st of this year. When you look at the entire school year last year, that number was sitting at 0.58 and the year before 0.41. So in response to your question, yes, we are tracking it. It is here, although our apologies that it's not explicitly said like this uncontrollable means this, what you're asking, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because when I look at uncontrollable, it could be, the hailstorm in northeast or whatever, if somebody had all their windows blowing out and that sort of thing. So I appreciate that. I did too want to just to highlight, I think, the concern that Trustee Lowe brought forward. I think, we have to keep in mind that we have well over 5,000 employees, and this is one of the bigger accountability reports that we have, I think, next to student learning, because we're a people-driven organization. And I think that I have seen some really good improvement over giving us data. And, we may not be totally there yet, but I think it was very helpful to see how many applications we had and how many interviews we did and then how many people we hired. I think the number of applications to our organization tells us that people want to work with us. And one of the things that's not in here, and unless I missed it in my read, was, I think I just read not too long ago, again, Calgary Catholic has maintained its position as one of Alberta's top 75 employers. And I think that speaks volumes to the type of employer that we are. So I just wanted to state that. And while it was 20 pages, I can tell you that these 20 pages were a lot easier to read than the 20 pages we had last year, because there's all the charts and the diagrams and it's not all words and the fact that you do get numbers. So anyways, that was my final question. Thank you for coming back to me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have Trustee Williams, and I believe that would be all the hands I'm seeing up. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And unfortunately, I don't have the page number written down for this one, but it deals with our central office staff. And I need to ask this question because it says when they come in, they're given a first year review and then not another one until year 5. So I need to understand because I know that through TQS that they're supposed to have growth charts that are happening on an annual basis. So when I saw this, I thought, well, wait a minute, that can't be what it says. So you have a first review and then you don't have another review until the 5th year?
The Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the page we're looking at is page 10 of 20.
Thank you for that, because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, 10 of 20. And so when you look at administration being principals, like principals, they are in the teaching, or not only principals, but also APs, vice principals, that it is true that they are evaluated in their first year and their 5th year of their appointment. Keep in mind that all teachers, through their professional obligations, need to have their own growth plan, and that's done by them, right? So that's happening, and they're constantly being supervised. So principals are supervised by area directors are supervised by superintendents. So it's a food chain for sure. If we look at the non-certified staff, our exempt staff that, you know, many of them work here at our central office, it clearly shows when they are evaluated as well. So does that answer your question, Trustee Williams?
Well, it does. So that means that, okay, you have a first year and then you have a 5th year, but during the time in between the 1st and the 5th, there is a constant evaluation going on.
Supervision. So all of our staff are supervised all the time, but in the years in between, the expectation would be is that the individual has a growth plan, and that everyone's being supervised by someone. Just like I'm the chief superintendent, I'm being supervised by you, the board, right? And so it's that trust relationship and providing feedback. And that's essential that we provide feedback to our employees all the time to let them know if they're doing well or if they're drifting off track, and getting them back on track. So,
but that's my question. I mean, you know, and it's not a secret, we evaluate you every year. Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking at the staff, when I saw this, I thought, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. There must be some form of evaluation in between year 1 and year 5. That's all I'm asking you. Is there an evaluation process between year 1 and year 5?
No, there is not. No formal evaluation between those years. And so you're absolutely right. As a chief superintendent, I am evaluated every year, which is different than our employees in Calgary Catholic. Yep. Okay.
So that's my first question, and maybe we need to talk about that. The second one that I have for you is on the overall daily rate on page 12. So I just want to understand this, because we have some really good numbers here. But what I'm trying to understand, when you say overall daily rate, then that's the number of staff that we have out on a daily basis. It's not annual, it's not an average. This is how much staff is missing from our buildings on a daily basis.
To the Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is correct.
Okay, thank you for that, because obviously, and you know, going to the chart that's above that, you know, with COVID, you know, obviously when we have staff out, there's a cost to the district, and that has gone down. But the fact is, what has happened is that overall we have more people out than we have in. Well, over year to year. Is what I'm going to when I start to look at those statistics. And I do know that COVID plays a part in that. But thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I think the important thing to highlight here is that when our teachers are going into isolation, if they are still not exhibiting symptoms or healing from COVID themselves, then the expectation is that they're working at home. And so they are still counted as being present because they are still teaching online at home. And so that's why, even though they're not in the school, they're still at work, they're just working from home. And so that's why these numbers, I think, can be shocking for people, because I think we would all think, hey, they should be way higher than what they are shown here. But there is an increase, but not as significant, because we still have people working just at home.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no further hands up on this, on behalf of the board, I would like to express appreciation through the chief, and again to Superintendent Hall for the preparation of this data that supports the draft accountability report on personnel. This is our first pass at it, and if I've understood correctly, there are a few tweaks to go back before its second presentation, and that was a request for small amounts of additional information, a notation that some information had inadvertently been cut off in the process, and a desire expressed for a more explicit direct linkage to the evidence of some of the initiatives undertaken. So with that, we will look forward to revisiting this at our next meeting, and thank you again. That's going to allow us to move on to item number 7, board school closure considerations, 7.1A. Sorry, just lost my place here. And I will ask our Chief Superintendent to bring some introductory comments to this piece.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so this evening I bring before you item 7.1, which is school closure considerations. In alignment with the quality indicators for Chief Superintendent, I have the responsibility to align authorities, direct school authority operations, and strategically allocate resources in the interest of all students. And I want to begin by saying that bringing forth this particular memo tears my heart, because I would love to see, like you, the Board of Trustees, a school in every single community. And to come forward to have a conversation about the possible closing of schools is something no Chief Superintendent, no trustee wants to do that, but it is in the best, I believe, in the best interest of Calgary Catholic that we do look at it for 2 primary reasons. The first reason being by closing these 2 schools that we'll be talking about this evening, St. Gerard and St. Angela School, we will be able to transition those students from very small schools to larger schools where they can be provided with better programming. So better programming opportunity is one. And secondly, there are some budget efficiencies. And I think as stewards of fiscal resources that are given to us by the province, we all need to care for the money really well. We also know that early in December, Calgary Catholic rolled out a thought exchange to all of its families to provide some input and guidance as to how we're going to deal with the upcoming budget. We are anticipating that we will be in a deficit position, and we heard overwhelmingly from people that you need to look at your infrastructure, how you're using infrastructure, and the possible closing of schools. So it's been a long time since Calgary Catholic has closed a school, but I think we're at the point that we do need to seriously consider the closing of St. Gerard and St. Angela School. Once again, I'll say it tears my heart to say that, but it is true. And with that, I want to highlight that for anyone who's interested in knowing more about how school closure process worked, it is all outlined in policy 14 for our, that is all approved by the board. And in there are steps that I know parents who may be listening and part of this evening may be wondering, well, how do I have a chance to provide my feedback? And so just to outline what's happening here this evening is administration, myself, I'm presenting the board a report that's in alignment with policy 14, and they will decide this evening if they want to move forward with the process, This evening is not about the actual closing of the schools. This is about if the board wants to move forward with a process or not. And that's one thing. And if they choose to move forward with a process, it is essentially a 3-part process. Number 1, if they initiate the process this evening, they will pass a motion, number 1. And then that will then direct administration to move forward with the process, which involves a public consultation meeting, help plan our future meeting. And we would set up the meeting in collaboration with the school council chair, the principal. We would inform the entire community. Anyone who wanted to be part of that meeting could be part of it. And at the meeting, there is an opportunity to provide feedback In addition to that meeting, if any individual wants to provide additional feedback, they are invited to write to the board, and they could write what they want to say, and all of the trustees would read those reports and take that into consideration as they would then, at the final part, the stage 3, is at a future meeting, that they would have to tell everyone this evening, if they want to move forward with this, the board would have to inform everyone the date of a decision to officially close a school or not, and when that vote would be held. So that's kind of what's going on here this evening. I know Superintendent Brad McDonald is with us, and his department has done a lot of intricate work in relation to the proposals that you see before you. And so how I would like to proceed is if Superintendent McDonald could walk us through the school closure proposal for St. Gerard School and St. Gerard School only. And then after that, we'll let the board talk more about that, and then we'll come back and we will talk specifically about St. Angela School. So over to you, Superintendent McDonald.
Thank you, Dr. Zoomless, Chief Superintendent Dr. Zoomless, and through you to the chair. I'm sharing my screen and I apologize. I had expected to kind of share excerpts, but I will walk through the whole report as indicated by Dr. Zoomless. And I echo Dr. Zoomless's sentiments that this is a very difficult decision to make. But in creating and drafting and compiling the information in these reports, we can see, although difficult, that in the long term, it may be in the best interests of all of our collective students holistically. So this proposal has been drafted following the terms and requirements of Policy 14, specifically Section 4, I believe. Yes, Section 4. And as per Section 4, we are required to indicate which factors are part of our consideration here. And in this case, for St. George's and St. Angela, both enrollment factors and revenue factors drive that. We are required by the policy to provide an accommodation plan for the students. However, we do feel that should the process go forward and should the trustees at some point vote to close the school, you would then start another Health Plan or Future consultation process, such that we could work with the community to determine which accommodation strategy they would prefer, ensuring that their decisions are incorporated or their feedback is incorporated in that decision. We have just demonstrated that proximal to the school, there are some programs which make sense for St. Gerard. St. Cecilia, St. Teresa, Calcutta are both operating K-6 French immersion schools in the proximity. When we look at from a transportation perspective, we feel that transportation costs, whether to St. Gerard or St. Teresa, St. Cecilia, would be similar because in a non-COVID year, the service to the school would be operated by 2 buses, and going forward, it would still remain 2 buses, however, just to a different school. We've also provided for, and apologize for the scrolling, a distribution map just indicating where the families occur for the St. Gerard's community. And so you can see, and we provided just for ease of reference where and the number of students are. We've also, if the students happenstance to be in a different school community boundary, i.e. in St. Cecilia, we just added them there. So the numbers reflected here are total students. The dots here reflected our family locations. And so it is, this is the student number. However, if you counted the dots, you would not get to the same value. We are required to provide information on long-term capital plan. Last year, we did have a St. Gerard's project on the capital plan a few years ago. As we truncated the capital plan from 24 projects to 20, it was removed. However, we still felt it was beneficial to provide the information on the status of the school. And based on similar projects completed at St. Cecilia, St. Boniface, we believe our preferred project for the school could cost up to $10 million if we went that way. Financial impact on the operating of the school. So similar to rationale we provided in previous years, we like to look at or provide information like a range of values because we're not exactly sure on the outcome at this time, but we think it's reasonable for transparency to provide a range for the trustees to consider. The range is kind of exists between a 0 student retention. So if every student at the school currently decided to attend a non-Calgary Catholic school after the closure, this would result in our minimum savings as a district in that all student-driven revenues and all student program-driven costs are eliminated. And this would be, on average, of the last 3 years, $343,000 annually. If we were able to maintain 100% of the student costs, and if we used our formula-driven practices to assign teachers for that number of students, This is basically a reasonable outcome for savings, assuming that the teachers, there are still operational costs required to provide education to these students. And so the range of savings for closing this program, St. George specifically, is provided at is a range between $343,000 and $637,000, depending on the student retention. We are providing some information on the capital needs, as there is, and I guess the capital needs that are required are dependent on the solution the community chooses. If we if the community suggests that we should migrate the students to either St. Cecilia or St. Matthews, there would be no capital costs. If we were to migrate the students to Mother Teresa, we believe we require at least one more portable, and therefore the cost of that portable is estimated installed at $35,000, which is our historical cost for moving a portable. We also provide the historical enrollment and projected enrollment for the school community as required by the policy. As you can see, the enrollment at St. Gerard's has been a concern for a few years, and projecting out with city census data, it appears to be, for the foreseeable future, at least a concern as well. As also required is alternative uses for the facility. And we always like to be as clear and transparent as we can. There isn't anything fully in the works, but as we recently opened up our St. Anne's Extended Learning Center in the Northeast, and it's been very successful in providing proximal high school continuing education opportunities to students. And due to St. George's location off Elbow Drive between the two transportation corridors of 14th Street and McLeod, we think there is an opportunity to look at putting one of these satellite programs there, providing the service closer to students. We also recently upgraded and created some parking opportunities at the school, which could be utilized as well. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's just, this is just one potential opportunity. So we want to make sure we're clear and transparent with providing that information. For 4.8, it is an open-ended question. We are, administration is tasked with providing information to the board, which it may reasonably require to consider the proposals. And so we thought we're bringing two informations relative to St. Gerard's. The first one is just how we would anticipate or try to meet the intent of Policy 14, Section 7 through public consultation. And so we have provided some information on how we will meet the specific requirements of public consultation through Section 7 within the meeting. For St. Gerard's, specifically, we've also provided some information relative to the co-locating of St. Isidore at St. Gerard, and why, unfortunately, it does not completely resolve the funding issue at St. Gerard. I.e., even if we were to assign all of the operating costs, the utilities, the supplies, and FSG costs of operating St. Gerard's to St. Isidore, we're still going to be left in a significant deficit position for the operating program. It really is the program and the way we deliver education that is providing the deficit. So this was a review of St. Gerard's proposal. St. Angela's proposal follows a very similar methodology, although the information is tailor-made to St. Angela. They are very distinct and different proposals and should be considered very independent of each other. Thank you, Dr. Zumas. If there's anything further, please provide any direction you'd prefer.
Thank you, Superintendent McDonald, and I go back to Chair Martin.
Thank you. Just so I can see trustees, if I could ask Superintendent McDonald to, thank you. It's just, I need to be able to see the trustees engaged. And for those who may be watching, typically when we are considering a direction, we have a recommendation from administration and a motion is presented. It is then discussed until the board has felt that it's asked the questions that it needs to ask. And then the motion is either supported or defeated. And before we start that conversation, I will ask Trustee Wellman for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees directs the Chief Superintendent to take all necessary actions and proceedings required under the Education Act and its regulations and all applicable board policies and administrative procedures to address the proposed closure of St. Angela School, and that all current grades K to 6 at the
Sorry, Trustee Wellman, you said St. Angela's. I believe you meant St. Gerard's.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I thought I was doing the first motion.
And that's St. Gerard's.
Sorry, on my page, it's not.
Oh, okay. If I'll just have you start again.
Yes, certainly. Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees directs the Chief Superintendent to take all necessary actions and proceedings required under the Education Act and its regulations and all applicable board policies and administrative procedures to address the closure of St. Gerard School and all of its current grades K-6 at the end of the 2020-2021 academic year, and that the date upon which the board plans to vote on a motion to close St. Gerard School and all of its current grades be March 24th, 2021.
Thank you for that. So with that motion on the table, I will open it up to trustees for questions of clarification. I have Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Wellman.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just couldn't quite understand point 4.4, where it says that the range of possible positive impact on our annual operating budget is projected between 343,000 and 637. That's awesome. It's wonderful that we have that. But I was confused as to why it was double. I thought it'd be, 343 to maybe 400,000, 450. Why is it such a big range? It's literally double. So I was curious about that. Like, what am I not seeing and not interpreting properly?
To the Chief.
Thank you, Chair Martin. What you're looking at is the district receives revenue for every student that it retains. And so if every student is retained, the government gives us, approximately $10,000 to continue their education. And so you do the math on that, that's where we come up with that much larger figure. The much smaller figure is that if those students leave us, we don't receive that income to help educate them. And we also have to think of the new funding framework as well. So it's not as simple as it used to be for sure.
So just to follow up, so you're anticipating that almost 50%, there could be a difference of 50% students not coming back or coming back when you're doubling that amount?
So there is a range, Trustee D'Souza, and so at the low end of the range, we're projecting if all the students say, no, Calgary Catholic is not for us, and they choose to go somewhere else, then that would be the savings to the district. But if they all stay with us, then we're looking at, the savings would be higher.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Wellman, Trustee Ivanelli.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In the report, it does on page, sorry, I just want to get the page number for administration. Oh, it's not numbered. Okay. Administration provides the enrollment for St. Cecilia, St. Matthew, and St. Teresa of Calcutta. St. Cecilia and St. Teresa are just straight K-6 schools, but St. Matthew is a K-9. And I understand that K-6 is English and only grades 7 to 9 is French. It would be helpful to know what that K-6 enrollment number is separate from the junior high, please. It would just be helpful. And another question.
Trustee Wellman, let's dispense with that question first. To the Chief, is that possible to have that data now, or do we need to come back with it?
Yeah, we would have to come back with it. I don't have that here at the tip of my fingers right now.
All right, Trustee Wellman.
Yes, thank you. And given that this is a process that was started last year and the board made the decision to close the process due to COVID, and we did have one public consultation meeting at the school, and there was an awful lot of information shared, and there was an awful lot of input given back to the board. There were emails, there were letters. Will all of that information be included in any new feedback, or is it totally disregarded and we're starting from scratch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are starting fresh with the new policy 14. So we have to keep in mind that last year and the process that happened was based upon an old policy 14, but the revised policy 14, the new policy 14 directly reflects the new Education Act, so there versus the School Act. So the policy 14 of the old was really shaped and framed under the School Act, but now we have the Education Act, which necessitated changes to the policy. And so you bring forth a really important distinction, but we are starting fresh again, and we are following policy 14, how it's outlined in board policy.
Okay, thank you. And I guess that leads me to the next question is, given that we're still in COVID, and given that there are still there's restrictions on public gatherings, not knowing what they will be tomorrow or 2 weeks or a month from now, what is administration planning? And do you have dates already set aside for when those public consultations would take place and how they would take place?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are looking probably at dates at the end of February for a public consultation, and we'll work closely with the community, the principal, the school council chairs to drill those down. And then because of the restrictions of having, not having group gatherings, that we will be doing this through Zoom. And Zoom, we have been testing the capability of Zoom to have breakout rooms as well as a large group presentation. So administration will share all of the information with the community and then allow participants to enter into breakout rooms with administrators, and they will have opportunities to provide their feedback. And if at the end of that evening that they feel like they have more feedback that they want to share, then they're invited to write the Board of Trustees and outline all of, everything they want all the trustees to hear. And so that is the two opportunities to provide feedback. I think it's also important to note that when it comes to making a presentation to the board, that in policy 14, that is not a possibility, that they have an opportunity, individuals have an opportunity to get the ear of the board by writing reports and whatever they want to say, as well as hopefully be in attendance at the Health Planner Future public meeting. So that's the two avenues for individuals to voice their concerns or questions so that trustees can make a really good decision in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Trustee Agnelli and Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding point 4.7, alternative community uses for a school, there was a reference made to the Northeast High School outreach and continuing ed program. How would the budget be impacted with this type of consideration, and what would happen with the current utilization rate of St. Anne's and the current outreach program?
Trustee Ivanelli, can you articulate the linkage of that to St. Gerard's?
Yeah, it's highlighted under 4.7 with Gerard School as a possible alternate.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were moving on to something different. Okay, to the chief. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In board policy 14, 4.7 is a criteria for a proposal that administration has to prepare for the board. And so we were simply, brainstorming. It's, as Superintendent McDonald said, this is, first of all, the closing of the school is not a done deal. Like we don't even know if we're going to continue the process. That's what we're talking about. And you guys are going to be deciding this evening. But in the future, if the school was to close, I think we need to be transparent with the community of what are some possibilities of how the school could be used. And Superintendent McDonald brought forward, there is a possibility, just like we do up in the community of Marlborough near Franklin Mall, we have high school classes in an outreach program that's happening there. And there is a strong demand by our continuing ed students. And so we're looking at, perhaps this could be a South campus to offer the same type of service that we've been offering up in Northeast Calgary, perhaps. But once again, we would need more consultation, and who knows, because that's, we need to find out what you guys are going to do here if the school is eventually going to close or not. And that won't happen if this is voted on successfully this evening until March the 24th meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to speak against this motion. I think, you know, I do realize what happened last year, that we shut down the process because of COVID. I think we're in COVID right now. Do we know what could have happened if we didn't continue with the process last time? The biggest problem that I'm having with this, and I don't disagree with the process we have in place. What I disagree with is that we're in an area of flux right now where we really can't predict what's going to happen. And so as far as I'm concerned, I don't think this is the time that we should be having this conversation. I understand that we're in a budget constraint. I understand that we have to make some difficult decisions as we go forward. But in fairness to the communities that we serve, I don't feel this is the time we should be doing this.
Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else wish to comment before I call the question? All right, seeing none.
Madam Chair, I'm also going to ask for a recorded vote.
All right, Trustee Lowe, before I call the question.
Thank you, Chair Martin. You know, I think that while these are hard decisions, I do believe that as governors who are charged with making decisions that support all of our students, that these are things that we do need to do our due diligence on and take the time to actually explore. So I would speak in support of the motion. I think that it's important that we take the time to look into this, to understand the needs from our communities through the conversations with them, and then make the best decisions for our district and all of our students.
Thank you for that. Trustee Wellman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in light of Trustee Williams' comments, and I certainly appreciate where she's coming from, it just makes me want to ask another question of administration. Administration did provide under 4.6 a table of student enrollment by school year for St. Gerard. And back in 2017, 2018, they had 16 kindergarten students registered. It's projected for 2023, 2024, they will have 16. And despite COVID, with online learning for this year, they have 15. So did administration use their standard process of looking at Calgary City census to come up with the projections for 2021 through to 2024?
To the Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in response to Trustee Wellman's question, the answer is yes, we do rely heavily upon City of Calgary census information. And I also like to point out on that chart that we have provided two numbers for this current school year. We know that there are 8 students who left St. Gerard School to join online learning, which leaves St. Gerard School with a total of 75 warm bodies that are in face-to-face instruction. And so both numbers are significantly below utilization. In fact, in Calgary Catholic, we like to think a school that is a healthy school has an enrollment of 150 students or more. As soon as we dip below the 150 student mark, it requires additional money being invested in the school above and beyond the money that we take in from the provincial government to make it a viable school building. And I think that's really important to highlight.
Okay. And if I could, just one last question based on this table. I mean, this table only goes back to 2017, 2018, where you show a total of 104 students. You had mentioned that right now we need about 150 students, if you will, to kind of break even, if you will, on expenses over revenue. Do we know how many years prior to 2017, 2018, St. Gerard's was below that optimal number?
I don't have that at the tip of my fingers, but we do have that data that we could get. I can tell you this, for many years, it's been below the 150 student mark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right. Seeing none, we have a recorded.
I do have my hand up, Madam Chair.
Oh, I didn't know if that was your old hand. All right, Trustee
No,
Williams.
that's my new
All right.
hand. So, Madam Chair, I guess when I'm looking at this, and given all the schools that we have in this district, and we need a presence in communities. We do. And I think all of us recognize that. And I do understand the import of our budgetary concerns. But on the other hand, I think we need to look at how much time are we spending when we decide that we're going to do a school closure or put the process in place to do one. And what time are we putting in it? And what are we investing in that community to work with us to make it work? And again, I'm going to say I oppose this. I think given the circumstance that we're in, that we're premature on doing this, even though it is a budgetary constraint.
Thank you for that. Last time, any questions? All right, then this is a recorded vote and I'm calling the question. All those in favor?
Chair Martin, this is Teresa. Would you just mind, because I can't see everybody on the screen, tell me who is, okay.
You betcha. Trustees Rath, D'Souza, Wellman, Lowe, Iavanelli, and Martin. Vote in the affirmative. Against?
Oh, sorry, just a sec. Rath,
Trustees Rath, D'Souza, Wellman, Lowe, Iavanelli, and Martin. Vote in the affirmative. Those opposed? Trustee Williams?
Trustee Williams.
Votes opposed.
Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you. And before we move on to our next consideration, again, to emphasize, this starts a process of consultation and has been echoed by our administrative team. A very difficult conversation on many levels. I want to thank administration for the provision of the report that provided the background that helped us come to a direction for today. And I anticipate, as the board does, and look very much forward to listening to the constituents. Those will be directly impacted by any potential change to St. Gerard's, and look forward to reviewing that data. With that, then I will again turn to administration for consideration of our second consideration. To the Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just before we move to St. Angela's, administration then will work closely with the St. Gerard community as we plan the dates for most likely end of February and move forward on the process of getting feedback. Now, at this time, I'd like to call upon Superintendent McDonald to walk us through the St. Angela School closure proposal. And so over to you, Superintendent McDonald.
Thank you, Dr. Zumlas. I will share my screen again if everyone's okay. So you'll find the information contained in the St. Angela proposal is very similar to the St. Gerard proposal in its layout, although the information provided is unique to the St. Angela situation. So I'll probably take liberties. However, if you'd like me to come back and review any of the content, please let me know. So very similarly, us bringing the proposal forward is a result of the thought exchange consultation regarding budget, where our publics generally asked us to at least take a look at program and school closures. To what Dr. Zumlas has said, where we feel like schools operating break even is at about 150 students. The St. Angela current enrollment is 100, and if you consider those students within the boundaries or attended the school last year that are currently online at St. Isidore, that number grows up to 109. Similar to St. Gerard's, we have provided a suggestion for accommodation strategies to students in St. Angela, and it's really based on K-6 proximal English programs. And very similarly, you know, we're just providing suggestions that we believe there are accommodation strategies that work. If the trustees decide in favor of the proposal and in favor eventually of the closure, we would be coming back to the community for consultation regarding student accommodations. We are looking at St. Alphonsus, St. Joseph, and St. Monica as 3 potentially proximal K-6 opportunities. St. Angela, although not officially, does have a very broad student, although its boundary is represented in light blue on the map, it is drawing students from across the city. It has historically been a workplace school, and as per the allowances of room and resources, any school can accept students if there are room and resources at the school to educate them. And so you do see a number of families and students choosing to access St. Angela from a variety of different school communities. Each dot on this map represents a family attending St. Angela. And so there might be multiple students at each one of those dots. Below is a number of students within each boundary. And you can see there are 46 students currently attending St. Angela from the regular attendance area. From a capital plan perspective, St. Angela does not have any capital projects listed on our current capital plan. Excuse me. But due to the vintage or age of the school, and due to projects we've conducted on similarly aged schools, we believe that if we were to modernize the building to a current facility level, we'd be expecting to spend between $3 and $4 million. So the financial impact on the proposal, very similar to St. Gerard's rationale, we are providing 2 numbers or a range to the trustees for consideration. The first, or the low number, is based on an assumption that 0 students currently attending St. Angela will remain with our district, and that all costs and all revenues borne by those students will not be realized next year. That the 0 retention does create the floor for potential cost savings at $295,000, which is an average of the last 3 years. And assuming that 100% of students are retained by our district, they do attend school, albeit at a different location, and less reasonable costs driven by teachers that will be required and other supports required to support these students. The high side of the range is $672,000, creating a range of $295,000 and $672,000 based on this decision. The actual number will vary depending on what the actual retention rate is between 0 and 100. Capital needs to the school. So we are providing information on, depending on the decision, if we worked with the community and the preferred decision, if the students are or relocated to St. Monica, we believe we can accommodate the students without any additional capital costs. If the community preferred decision is, and that's the direction the district goes, St. Alphonsus or St. Joseph, then in either case, we'd be looking at 1 portable unit for one-time portable moving cost of $35,000. Similar to St. Gerard's, we are providing, for St. Angela, we are providing historical and future projections. And as you can see, it is historically and remaining flat in enrollment projections. And to Dr. Zumlis's rationale, we do heavily rely on our census data, which is collected in a partnership between the Calgary Board of Education and the City of Calgary. So possible alternative educational opportunities. At this time, we are not, we do not see a future use for the facility currently. But with all of our closed schools, you know, we are always looking at options to ensure the continued public use of the facilities. Some potential uses may be, you know, other district needs that we become aware of in the future, as well as other public school board needs, charter school needs, or other needs. So we do look to try and find a use for the school once it is no longer operating a education program. Similar to St. George's, we are providing Help Plan Our Future process for consultation during a time of COVID. And similar to St. George's, we believe that we can meet the intent of Board Handbook Policy 14, Section 7. And so we are describing how we intend to meet those obligations through Zoom. And that is the proposal for St. Angela.
Thank you. Oh, perfect. Thank you for that. Like you read my mind. And thank you again for collating the information needed on both. And as was the process with our last contemplation, if I can turn to Trustee Ivanelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of Trustees directs the Chief Superintendent to take all necessary actions and proceedings required under the Education Act and its regulations, and all applicable board policies and administrative procedures to address the proposed closure of St. Angela School and all of its current grades K-6 at the end of the 2020-2021 academic year, and that the date upon which the board plans to vote on a motion to close St. Angela School and all of its current grades be March 24th, 2021. Madam Chair.
Sorry, yep, I got it. Yep, it just came up muted. My apologies. And thank you for putting the motion on the floor. And again, I will open it up for trustees for questions of clarification. Trustee Wellman.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is similar to the same question I had for St. Gerard when I look at the enrollment numbers. However, with St. Angela, I think it's a little bit different. Certainly, the Board of Trustees went through this process, I believe it was almost 10 years ago, because Dr. Lucy Miller was still with us as superintendent when we were looking at considering to close St. Angela's. Ultimately, the decision was to keep the school open, make it a workplace school, and hopefully, bolster up those numbers. I see that as of 2018, the numbers were at 116, but the actual number that are from the immediate attendance area for St. Angela is really only 46. That being said, it would be helpful to know what the enrollment was of St. Angela prior to us making it a workplace school, and so that I could just see what has happened within its own community over the last decade plus. But I have to ask the question of administration. If 150 is the optimal number, and that if a school goes above 150, then obviously it helps that particular school to be more efficient. So if you're taking students out of the areas outside of their attendance area, they're obviously leaving their community school. So are we not having an adverse effect on some of our other schools? For every student you take away, you actually lessen their efficiency, if you will, when it comes to cost over revenue. Is that not a fair conclusion?
To the chief?
From a budgetary lens, that is a fair conclusion. But I think, Calgary Catholic has a long history of working with parents, and for a variety of reasons, principals, many principals, not every single principal, they have the ability to allow a student to enter their school according to the language of the Education Act if there are room and resources. We have some schools that are capped or at their limit with their serving their own community, especially our new schools and new areas that are bursting at the seams. But I think the point here is that St. Angela School administration, if we look back in history, has worked hard with that community to try something like a workplace school to try to boost its enrollment over time. It worked a little bit, but it hasn't been sustainable over the long run. And for the last number of years, it is operating below that threshold of 150 students. And we can definitely provide more historical registration numbers if the Board of Trustees approves the process going forward, and we'll build that into our help plan our future evening, so we can look specifically at the actual number of students that live within the boundaries. And I think you bring forward a really good point here, Trustee Wellman, 46 students. And when I started this evening, I talked about there's two benefits of why we close schools. And once again, I'll say it, it tears my heart that we even have to have these conversations. But the number one benefit is these students, if they're integrated into a bigger school, there'll be more opportunity for programming, more opportunity for extracurricular activities, of course, in a world outside of COVID, right? But, and the reason for that is because in bigger schools, you have more staff, and with more staff, you have more clubs and more everything else that's going on than in a small school. It's much harder to offer those extra things.
So the last question I have in regards to the enrollment and the projections is, I know we use the City of Calgary census data. It's impossible to use that methodology for St. Gerard's because you only can guarantee some of the students that live within that area. You can't look at census data through the whole city and say, from that, this is how many that might go to St. Angela. So I am concluding that these projections are really based on the past history since making St. Angela a workplace school. And I guess with reading today that the City of Calgary anticipates their vacancy rate in downtown is going to go as high as 30%. That's got to be a concern. And then, of course, understanding that Synovus is going to be laying off over 2,000 people, that there's a lot of things that can really impact your projections that I'm looking at right now.
Madam Chair, Trustee Wellman is absolutely correct that we're fortunate in Calgary Catholic to have our manager of planning, Nishka Waite. She looks closely at census data. And I think in your comment, Trustee Wellman, I think you meant to say St. Angela earlier. You said St. Gerard. But the point you're trying to make is that when you look at census data for the community that is located close around St. Angela within its boundary or attendance area, that, and then there's a bit of predicting that has to happen because it is a former workplace school to see, how many, to make an estimate as to how many kids would come to the school for kindergarten. And so it's a bit of a crystal ball, like for sure. But when we look at the past trends for this school, that for the last many years, it's been well below the threshold of 150 students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Trustee Williams and Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was in the queue.
Okay, I've got you too, Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm again going to oppose the motion in front of us, and again for the same reason. I think that given the year that we've had and with what's happened with COVID, do we really have a fair chance to assess where we're going to go on going forward? Also, listening to what's happened, and I find it very discouraging. And I know it's being driven by budgetary concern. But the fact is, I certainly wouldn't want to see us go forward as a school district and say, okay, if you have under 150 students in your school, then you're up on the cutting block. And I think this is a dangerous place for us to go, because one of the important things for us to be as Calgary Catholic is having presence in our communities. And, I'm looking at this from two different places. I understand that we have to be fiscally responsible. I understand that. But I also understand that our first and foremost is to the students of our district and their families. So are we going to start cutting out schools because, you didn't meet the 150 threshold and therefore we think you need to be gone? And I'm very concerned about that. And I look at my knowledge of the rules. They have schools with low populations that are schools of necessity. Well, maybe that's what we need to look at right now. These schools that we're planning on closing, and when you look at the map and where these schools are located, whether it's St. Gerard or St. Angela, and then you look at the closest schools to them, are we ridding ourselves of saying, okay, well, we're just not going to be in your community anymore? And as I said, typically I would agree with this process, but during this period of time with COVID, do we actually know what our numbers are? Do we know that we're making a just decision on this? And I feel very strongly about this. And I'm a little concerned about what's being projected right now as we walk through this. And the number of 150 keeps coming up. Hey, as the trustee in wards 11 and 12, I have a lot of schools that are wavering on that. And I think the message we're sending out is not a good one. And as I said, normally I would agree to this process, but I think at this point in time, because of COVID and because our parents haven't had the opportunity in both schools, because we all know this. This process started last year. It was forestalled because of COVID. And now, as our chief superintendent said, now we start anew. Well, is that really fair? So I'm discouraged by what we're doing right now, but of course it will be the will of the board. But again, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote. And as I said, I oppose to what we're doing right now because of the circumstance we're in.
Thank you. I have Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Lowe.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to turn on my microphone. Thank you, Madam Chair. I recall that I was at the meeting where we had the parents come and talk about, their concerns about closing down the school. And one of the things that was brought up by the parents is they asked us to consider making it a science school to get in more students, because there was a big, long waiting list at CBE for school that was a science school. And they said it would be really great if we could consider that. The other thing that they also said is that it's not just the kids who are coming from the community, but a lot of parents who go to work downtown and bring their kids over here. So my question is, was that considered, number one? And number two is, what has actively been done in putting any, notices or whatever in the community newsletters to try and increase the numbers in the school so we don't have to close it?
For the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a former school principal, and I've been a principal in a very large school, and I've been a principal in a very small school like St. Henry School, and every principal works with their community and they advertise and they try their best to recruit individuals to attend their school, especially if they're in a smaller school situation. When it comes to designating schools as a science school or a technology school or an art school, like we've done many of these things within Calgary Catholic with limited success. And I think when we look at St. Angela School, who years ago had the idea of becoming a workplace school, that they attracted some, but not enough. It's been proven over time here, like if it worked out for them, we would see the higher numbers, but we haven't seen those high numbers continue at the school. So I don't see that as a viable alternative. I'm just speaking the honest truth from my own experience, that, they may see a slight increase, but then a dip after that. And I think on behalf of administration, I'll say it again, it tears my heart, but I have to do my job and bring forward this proposal to you, because we are fiscal stewards of money and providing programming, quality programming to students. And I think it has to be highlighted that in the proposal that Superintendent McDonald brought forward, that this has the potential savings of over $600,000. $600,000 equates to the equivalent of 6 full-time teachers that could be redeployed in the system to bring down class sizes and to help other schools with very large classes. So although we sometimes think that the decision is solely for or impacting the students of the schools named today, it does have a bigger impact of the benefits that it brings to all other schools within Calgary Catholic. And I think that's important that we all keep that in mind as we contemplate the very difficult and important decisions that we're talking about this evening.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes, and then I'll turn it to Trustee Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for providing those figures, Superintendent, Chief Superintendent. I was just curious to know, should our students decide to go to the neighboring CBE schools, what will the figure of cost be for us in terms of lost revenue?
To the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you go back in the proposal that was presented on St. Angela's School in section 4.4, it talks about there's a range. Like it really depends upon how many students stay, because our savings is twofold. The savings from closing the school for not paying for an extra caretaker at that school, for paying for the secretary at the school, for paying for an assistant principal at the school, or a librarian at the school. So you get savings there, but you also get income coming in for every student that is no longer at that school but stays with Calgary Catholic. We receive income from the government. So by putting that together is how we come out ahead, right? And so the range is somewhere between, as noted on Superintendent McDonald's report, anywhere from $295,000 to $672,000. And we don't know, because it really depends upon, first of all, does this even go forward? And if this even goes forward, how many students stay and how many students go?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have Trustee Lowe and then Trustee Rath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Chief Superintendent Zimbalist, for the comments around our decision making, and the impact is greater than one individual school when we look at these things. That was one of the points I was going to raise. But I do have a question in regards to the dollar amounts. I know that this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that I'm correct, that we have a principal that is shared at St. Angela and another location, and that we don't have 2021 data in the budget information. How does this impact the dollars, or does it, or how was it considered in this information provided to the board?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So talking about the one principal's two school pilot project that we implemented this year, a principal on average is $125,000 salary. So instantly, by having one principal share two schools, you would think that you're saving $125,000, but that's not the case, because we do have to have an assistant principal at the school, because the principal can't be in two buildings at once. So to do that, what we do is we do have to inject a bit of money to afford a half-time teacher to free up an assistant principal to help. So it really equates to a saving about half of a principal's salary. So there is some savings there by having one principal share or look after two schools. All indications in relation to that project thus far is it's been pretty positive. We are in the middle of getting more data so that we can bring it back to the board to see if that's something the board and administration want to continue as we go forward. But it is partial savings for sure by having one principal share two schools.
Thank you. Trustee Lowe, any further questions?
No, thank you for that information. Just maybe close with a comment that I would be speaking in favor of this, because I do believe that as a board we have to do our due diligence to understand the needs, and this is why we have the process with our community to gather information. And we're not making a decision today. We're only allowing us to have this conversation.
Thank you. I have Trustee Rath.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, that was a great point, Trustee Lowe. Madam Chair, I just wanted to make sure we are bringing it back to, this is our ask today is, are we going to have an HPOF process? Are we going to go through this rigmarole of making sure and asking all the questions and making sure we've done our due diligence? So I just wanted to bring us back to the motion at hand, that we are voting on whether or not that we are going to be looking at this. And
yeah, that would be correct.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. All right. Can we call the question then?
No, I will call.
No?
I'll call the question.
Okay.
I wanted to comment though first, and I haven't commented on either until this point, because usually the chair waits till the end. But as one of seven, I did want to share my observations. And we have been in these very difficult situations before. Again, I want to thank administration for a thorough presentation of all of the facets that need to be considered when we're looking at potentially closing schools. We've talked a little bit about the 150 and budgetary constraints, and I know that there was an opportunity to address that, but I think what we really need to ensure is delivered loudly and clearly that at the end of the day, we're making the best decisions for the students that we serve. And that may be 150, it may be budgetary. Those are not, they're important, but from my perspective, they're not the most important. We have to look at where are we as stewards and responsible for the very best educational outcomes on behalf of the students and families that we serve. How are we going to do that? Is it possible in a school that may or may not be optimally filled? Are there other options? Those are all conversations for another day. But I really want to make sure that it's understood that there are a variety of really important contemplations and conversations that this board will have as we consult with our community. And I'm satisfied with the process for consultation as outlined. Despite COVID, I think that we can do this well. I think one difference between last year's consideration and this year's was last year's demanded a decision, I believe, within a couple of weeks of a complete lockdown, which was unprecedented. We've come a long way in a year in our ability to reach out to communities, and I am comfortable that we will have a robust consultation. Looking forward to reading submissions from those who are impacted, and I know it's going to help inform the ultimate direction that this board is going to take. And before I call the question, which will be a recorded vote, this is one last opportunity for anybody who has anything to share, and seeing no hands, then I will call the question. All those in favor?
Again, Chair Martin, if you could let me know.
Sure will. I have trustees Rath, D'Souza, Wellman, Lowe, Iavanelli, and Martin. And
Thank
opposed? Trustee Williams, opposed.
Thank you very much.
All righty. And thank you again to administration for walking us through the process to this point. That will allow us to move on to item 7.1B, which is policy 15. And this is part of our regular policy review that we do as part of our responsibilities as governors to ensure that the policies that we have are current and appropriately written. If I could have a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that the Board of Trustees amends Policy 15, Recruitment and Selection of Personnel as follows. Amend bullet point 2 to now read as, in order to protect the board from sudden loss of the Chief Superintendent's services, the Chief Superintendent shall ensure that staff is designated to perform the services of the Chief Superintendent in the case of a short-term or prolonged absence, no longer than 365 days, and that the chair is advised of the delegation. And then to amend the legal reference to now read as Parts 4 and 7 of the Education Act.
Thank you. You have the motion on the floor. I see Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There needs to be some clarity on this, because if you look at the first bullet that's on there, it basically says that the only people responsible for the Chief Superintendent is the Board of Trustees. The problem with this one, and although we're used to it, is that, we have the revolving, if you will, superintendents that are put in place by the Chief Superintendent. The problem with this, and if the board would indulge this, is that we just add at the back of the statement for approval of the board. Because I think at this point in time, what we're doing is saying that you can designate, or basically that chief can designate to you what's going to happen. But the fact is, it has to be board approved.
So to be clear then, Trustee Williams, you're looking for an amendment to add to the end?
Yeah, just to add at the end, and actually, because I just have to go from my short screen to my long screen. Just hang on one second. So what I'm asking is that at the end of this, amend the bullet point to read
And you're speaking to
blah, 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 blah.
two.
And then at the end, and that the chair is advised of the delegation for approval of the board. Because I think the problem that we have with this right now, and even if you look at number 1 above it, the fact is it states, and we know this from the Education Act, the chief cannot designate or appoint anybody to take him over. The only people that can is the board. The problem with putting in this or prolonged absence no longer than 365 days is that, and all of us know this, that the chair does have a letter that if something happens to the chief, there is an advisement of what the delegation should be. But what's not there is that the chair can't make that decision on their own. It has to be a decision of the board. And I think that's what's missing from this.
All right, so we have a request.
So I would ask for that amendment.
All right, I'm going to ask you to give the wording specifically so that Omar could incorporate it as a potential amendment. I have trustee D'Souza, trustee Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly the point I was trying to make at the special board meeting. I was very concerned the way it was written. I had expressed at that meeting that the trustees who were present at the meeting were aware of what it meant, but should we all not come back, the 7 of us, it's not apparent, even though we have the privy and we can put whoever we want. It was not apparent and transparent in that policy. And so I would like to see this amendment, because without this amendment, I would like a recorded vote and I cannot support it.
Thank you. I have trustee Wellman and trustee Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Madam Chair, we certainly did have a very robust conversation in regard to this point, and I am going to speak against the amendment. And because this is about giving the chief superintendent the opportunity to designate individuals to provide services, certainly not to replace him, but to provide services. It's very clear within the Education Act that the Board of Trustees are the only ones with power and authority to hire the chief superintendent. We have a chief superintendent that every month designates a senior officer to fulfill his role in the event that there is a sudden loss of his services, whether that be through illness, an accident, whatever the case may be, winning, you know, the lottery, whatever. And so I would hate to see us get bogged down every month having to approve that type of designation. The superintendent designates people on, I think it's a bi-weekly basis throughout the summer, so that everybody has an opportunity to take a vacation. And then that would suggest then the board would need to approve that. And I just can't support that. Again, the board always has the sole authority to change anything. And if there was a case where there was a prolonged absence of even 120 days, the board has the opportunity to say, you know what, we want to do our own appointment. So, Madam Chair, I just will not support that amendment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before we go on, and I've got 2 in the queue, trustee Lowe and trustee D'Souza, would it be possible to put the proposed amendment up so we can know with certainty the wording that is being proposed? Is it possible to put it up on the screen?
It is. Just give Omar a moment
Oh,
here.
sure. Yep. You know, you'll have to, yeah, that is the relevant. Whoops, we've lost you. Is it possible to get the screen up again?
Yeah, it is. I think Omar's just having some technical glitch there, so it's coming.
I'm impressed that we're able to do this at all.
Technology, yeah.
All right, so we have bullet number 2 there, and the amendment that the chair is advised. I believe that's the current. So what you're looking at is an addition on the end. Trustee Williams, can you repeat your addition?
Would
Madam
be
Chair,
that,
it's very fine print. Can someone read that out because it's
Yeah.
difficult to read?
Omar, if you can just enlarge your screen a little bit, please. At the bottom, the slider at the bottom, there we go. How's that?
Okay, and then if we can have that amendment, Trustee Williams.
was that after it says the chief, what is it? And that the chair is advised of the delegation.
Yeah.
And so the difficulty with that is that it's not your decision, it's a board decision.
Right.
So what
it
it should say is for approval of the board.
So, Madam Chair, if I could just...
You would be advised, but then you would need to come to the board for approval. That's the only question we're asking. I understand what Trustee Wellman is saying, because obviously those of us that have been around, and even those that haven't been around as long as us, the fact is the chief appoints his superintendents, and they're always on the top of our calendars that this is what they're going to do. And that's how I understand this. But the fact is, if something happens to our chief, it's not for the chief to designate who comes into play.
We're clear. We're clear on that. I have Chief Superintendent Zumlis who wanted to speak to it, and I have 2 in the queue. For the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's begin by hoping and praying that nothing happens to the chief. Highlight that right away.
Yes, and I'm touching with Brian.
But I just wanted to say that it is true that on a monthly basis, a different superintendent, and they're just on a simple rotation. So each one of my senior officers, superintendents, are on a monthly rotation. And so based upon the reading of this amendment then, and if this was to be approved, essentially what I would be providing to the board then is the calendar, the schedule of the months. That's for your approval. I guess that's how I'm interpreting this. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but that seems like, and to me, that seems like an administrative role. And so here it comes down to governance versus administration. So we have to be careful when we're making amendments that we're not moving into the world of administration, but that's at the preview of trustees. Like that's totally up to you guys. And if you want to do that, right?
No, Trustee Williams, I've got 2 others in the queue. I've got Trustee Lowe and Trustee Susan.
Thank you, Chair Martin. So I would interpret the same way as Chief Superintendent Zumlis. So there are the cases where the chief is gone for a short-term vacation. That's a short-term absence. So there's the designate that takes over. Our policy should support, not hinder us in our work. And I believe the policy as it was read without this stands. So I would speak against this amendment. Number 1 states that if it is going to be longer than 365 days, the chief has no authority. We also know that as a board, we can give direction at any point in time. That is not something that has to be specifically written in every single policy item that we have. So I don't have a problem with the amendment as it read before, but I would not support this change.
Thank you. I have Trustee D'Souza. Do you have something new to add?
No, I just like to clarify the way I read it is I really honestly do not have any problem with the chief putting in someone every month. I don't want to micromanage. That's absolutely fine. I have an issue of if there is someone who's put in there for 363 days, for example, one person who's there for 363 days, then that's an issue for me because we should have a say in that. And I know, yes, we do, but it needs to be transparent and apparent over there. And this amendment makes it that way because I'm not going to get into every month who's in there. That's not an issue.
Thank you. Omar, can I bother you just to put the faces back because I need to see if I have further hands up. I've got the amendment written down. Thank you so much. All right. And I'm seeing no further hands up here. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment and then we'll go back to the main motion. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
1, All opposed? Okay, the amendment's defeated. We're back to the main motion. Is there any further conversation on policy 15? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
I am.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair Martin, I think Myra had asked for a recorded vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, Myra, did you ask for a recorded vote?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Okay, all those.
I'm also opposed.
All right, then those who supported Teresa,
Yes.
Trustee Rath, Trustee Wellman, Trustee Lowe, Trustee Ivanelli, Trustee Martin.
Okay.
Those who opposed, Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Williams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, to the second part of this motion then. It's a three-parter.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees, by a quorum of the trustees present, approves the second and final reading shall immediately follow the first reading.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
All right. And again, that motion is carried.
And Madam Chair, with that, I move that the Board of Trustees amends Policy 15, recruitment and selection of personnel, as follows. Amend bullet point number 2 to now read as, in order to protect the board from sudden loss of the Chief Superintendent's services, the Chief Superintendent shall ensure that staff is designated to perform the services of the Chief Superintendent in the case of a short-term or prolonged absence no longer than 365 days, and that the chair is advised of the delegation, and amend the legal reference to now read as parts 4 and 7 of the Education Act.
Thank you. And you've heard the question. All those in favor? Okay, 5-4. And those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. That's going to get us to 7.1c, first, second, and final reading of policy 16. If we could have a motion.
Policy 16.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of Trustees amends Policy 16, fundraising, as follows. Amend the legal reference to now read as paragraphs 2413 and 2414 of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Canons 803 and 806, number 1 of the 1983 Code of Canon Law.
Thank you. Any conversation on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion's carried.
I move, Madam Chair, that the Board of Trustees, by a quorum of the trustees present, approves the second and final reading shall immediately follow the first reading.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried.
And I move that the Board of Trustees amends Policy 16, fundraising, as follows. Amend the legal reference to now read as paragraphs 2413 and 2414 of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Canons 803 and 806, number 1 of the 1983 Code of Canon Law.
Thank you. And all those in favor? Thank you. And that motion is carried. Thank you very much for that. That'll bring us to item 8.1, budget update to the Chief Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just before I dive into this one, all administrators that are part of our board meeting this evening, I want to thank you for a hard day at work, and feel free, if you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. If you want to log off and enjoy your family, that's totally up to you. And so thanks again. 8.1 memo here. Big thanks and shout out to Superintendent Naren Kishin-Shindani, our Superintendent of Finance and Business. I love the visual diagram that we all know that in Calgary Catholic, budget is a process, not an event. And Superintendent Kishishandani and his team, if you look at the January, February arrow, they've been working on base budget preparation, the preliminary and final enrollment estimates, board strategic planning, as well as we're expecting a provincial budget coming in February. We're really in a status, a holding pattern when it comes to our budget right now, and that we need more information, and that information will come to us when the provincial budget is rolled out. We are anticipating that we will be in a deficit position. As to what extent is still unknown, because it really depends upon the provincial budget. But I think it's our responsibility, just as we talked about the potential closing of schools, that we all have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that we're spending money in the best interest of students here in Calgary Catholic. So administration is examining all of our expenditures throughout the system, and we look forward to working closely with our trustees who own budget as we go forward to make tough decisions that hopefully will position Calgary Catholic to continue to be one of the best organizations to offer Catholic education to K-12 students. And with that, that is our budget update today. Superintendent Kishishandani is here if there are any questions for him or myself at this point in time.
I'm seeing no questions at this time, and recognizing that this is a standing item of every public meeting. We know that this is still a work in progress and not a finite place that we land at once or twice a year. I want to thank you for keeping the board well apprised of the different drivers and how they're going to impact a provincial or a budget. Most notably, we're waiting for the provincial budget, but appreciative also of the thought exchange engagement with our stakeholders that have allowed us to have a sense of the priorities of our community, and that will in turn help us with our budget. So we look forward to continuing that conversation. And thank you again through the chief to Superintendent Kishishandani for his work. Very much appreciated. That'll allow us to move on to 8.2 COVID-19 update. And again, back to the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For memo 8.2, you'll see a copy of one of the parent letters that has been sent home since our last report. There was another letter that went home late on Friday that never made the board package, but will appear in our next update. And I also want to report to you the numbers as of today. We know the numbers for COVID-19 fluctuate day by day. As of right now, we're sitting with 3 staff infected, as well as 65 students who've tested positive. So that's a total of 68 individuals in Calgary Catholic who have tested positive. That has resulted in 2,231 students under self-isolation, and we have 217 staff in isolation. So when you put all of those figures together, we're sitting at about 2,450, roughly, right in that area. I also want to note that since we started monitoring at the very beginning of COVID-19 and the resumption of education back in September, we've had a total of 555 students who have recovered from COVID-19 and 90 staff who have recovered. And the final number I have for you is we have 43 schools presently with an active status of COVID-19. So that means they're either under alert or an outbreak. So with that, I'll pass it back to the board in case there's any questions or comments on our COVID update.
The board? Nope, seeing no questions again. Thank you for this report, for keeping our families included with your updates. I think that those go a long way, that and the presence on our website as well, to supporting our staff and our kids. Very much appreciated. We can move on to 8.3, district celebration cancellation. This one's pretty straightforward to the chief.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So with COVID-19, where there's crisis, there's also opportunity. It's sad that we're announcing in this memo that the face-to-face celebration that we typically have in March each year to recognize students and staff for their accomplishments will not be taking place due to COVID restrictions. But let me assure you that we've gone a long way of celebrating and recognizing people in Calgary Catholic, especially with the hiring of Liaison of Arts and Culture, Ms. Holly Sheely. We just came off an extraordinary week of recognizing our long service employees who've celebrated 25 years, as well as even in a chief update that went out today, we recognize students from St. Mary's High School who were selected to talk about the Anne Frank exhibit. We know that today is the International Day to recognize the Holocaust and remembrance of the Holocaust. And so we're always celebrating and recognizing. And so I wonder, as we go forward, if we should be putting a new lens on how we do recognition, much like budget, where budget isn't a one-time event, but it's occurring over the course of the school year. That's how I would like to see us recognize throughout the year, and to involve, trustees where possible at the school, and to keep them involved in things. So that's for further conversation with the board at a future meeting. I'd love to get some more input and feedback on that, but this memo here just says that the March event is now not happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I just had to unmute. The district celebration is always a beautiful evening that highlights our students, and is completely coupled with our formation of student success. Chief Superintendent Zumlis spoke of the numerous students who are worthy of recognition. And I recall with our FNMI students, certificates were sent out. Is there an idea or thought to doing that, where trustees could perhaps sign certificates for these students and to honor their recognition and their exceptional work within the district?
I had a thought on that, but it sounds like this might be part of a bigger conversation of perhaps reimagining recognition that might go beyond the scope of this meeting. And if it's the will of the board, we could put that on a special meeting agenda for further work. I'll turn it to the chief for comment.
Thank you, Chair Martin. I totally agree in that, the recognition by trustees, like, you guys own this. Like, you guys need to give me direction and help shape it. All I'm saying is that due to COVID restrictions, we can't have the face-to-face event here that's happening, but I'd be more than willing to work with you closely as a first team as we figure out, because the recognition is important, and how do we do that going forward? And this could be a great opportunity, because I think, from what I've experienced on these district celebration nights, even if COVID wasn't here, is maybe we've grown out of what we've tried to do in the past. Like, they are packed, like, they're so successful, they're amazing, but maybe we need to reimagine something different to go forward.
To that end, and you brought up a really interesting proposal. Would there be, perhaps Trustee Ivanelli, you may want to consider a motion that might direct this conversation back to a special board meeting for further consideration. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, then we will move.
You have my hand up, Madam Chair.
All right, Trustee Williams.
Thank you. And I would agree with Trustee Ivanelli. And I would also agree with what Dr. Zumlis said, is that because we're bigger, the events are bigger, and maybe we do need to look at maybe doing it in a different manner, where we're recognizing the students, whether it's in Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, whatever, but maybe we do need to figure out a better way to do the recognition rather than trying to have everybody down at the board office.
Thank you for that. Trustee Ivanelli, then I'll leave you to prepare that motion. That will get us to 8.4, extended French relocation, All Saints High School. To the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So administration is constantly looking at how do we best serve the students in Calgary Catholic, and how do we operate within our fiscal means as well. And so the extended French program has been offered at All Saints High School. And in fact, it was part of the philosophical framework as we established this school. Now, All Saints High School has only been up and running for a couple of years, and it's already exceeding its utilization rate, like, it's at capacity. In the extended French program, it's sitting at about just over 60 students in that program. And we have a similar number of students over at Bishop O'Byrne High School. We believe we could offer a much stronger program if the students from All Saints were positioned or streamlined to merge with the students over at Bishop Carroll School, Bishop Grandin School. My apologies, I got the bishops all mixed up there, but Bishop Grandin School. And so that is one thing that administration has moved forward with. In fact, the principal of All Saints High School, Mr. Boulder, has reached out and contacted every family personally by phone. And they understand, they get it. Administration is also working on, a transition. Like, what if the students don't want to merge there? Like, what could we do? Could we offer some summer school programming, perhaps? Could we offer, something to merge it, maybe an online course? So all these things are being looked at right now, but overall, we believe this is the best path forward. And so we are moving forward with this. So this is updating the board of this change. Extended French is still offered in the district. So much like when we came forward with full day kindergarten changes, as well as the IB change in the past meeting, these are not program closures. I need to highlight, we are not closing any program. We're just relocating it to another high school because we believe it's best for students, and it will result in some budgetary savings as well. I want to thank Superintendent John McDonald, who leads the south part of the school district and has worked closely with the school community along with area director that's responsible for the school. And so we are in pretty good shape. So with that, I'll pause and open up for any questions that may be having tonight.
Trustee D'Souza, and then Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. I really appreciate that the chief has considered having online schooling for this. I think that's a brilliant idea. I was curious to know, is there a French immersion program at CB in the vicinity? And if so, how many students could we possibly lose as a result of closing this? And then the second question is, will there be the same transportation considerations given when we were looking at the IB program? And my third question is that 2 weeks ago, because we were really tight on time, I had some follow-up questions to the IB program. When would I expect the answers to those questions?
I think what we can do right now, and for the purposes of this meeting, is address the French immersion.
No, I understand.
Yeah, thank you for that. To the chief.
Yeah, thank you. So there were three questions there. The first question in relation to what CBE French immersion schools are in that quadrant and their population. I don't have that information at hand. If that's the will of the board, or an individual trustee can put forth a trustee referral, and we'll definitely get that information for you. The second question, when it came to transportation, high school students have, most of them, the majority of them have bus passes. And so we work closely with our transportation department to ensure that there is a pathway for transportation to get them to the school. And then the last question in relation to, we are working on the questions that were submitted by Trustee D'Souza in relation to the IB programming. And so once Brad McDonald and his team, who have been overwhelmed with the number of requests, and I want to highlight this, like, there have been so much work that Brad and his team, Superintendent McDonald, have been under. I can't thank the guy enough, and we need a bit of patience as we sometimes get some of the questions that you ask answered, because we're still running the district too, and Superintendent McDonald has many responsibilities. So thank you, Superintendent McDonald.
Thank you. If I can, you wanting the Superintendent McDonald to interject? Or
no, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. No, I just, I'm not seeing any other hands up. As the trustee whose wards All Saints lands in.
I do have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, you did too.
Keep ignoring me.
Yeah, I'm not seeing your face, so I'm not seeing your hand wave. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I do. And actually, because of the fact that I've been the trustee at Bishop Grandin for many years, and I do know, and I thank John McDonald for calling me and advising me of what was going on. But I do have another question, and it ties in, because Bishop Grandin right now, and I just want confirmation of this, Bishop Grandin right now does the French immersion, but it also is the only high school that we have right now that does the Spanish. So is that still continuing? Like, are the programs, because right now, from what I understand, They go from St. Benedict to St. Bonaventure, and then their school is Bishop Grandin. So, you know, it's not just French immersion, it's also the Spanish program. So is that still going to continue?
Thank you, Chair Martin. There is another high school, St. Francis High School, that also offers Spanish programming in North Calgary. And you know, these decisions are board decisions. They're first team decisions. These are planning decisions where we would need to, just like Trustee Lowe mentioned earlier, like we need to have deep conversations about the future of Calgary Catholic and, you know, what programs, non-funded programs that are offered in our district, and which ones are going to be our path forward and which ones may not be our path forward. And so that's a future conversation. At this point in time, this is just a slight adjustment. Another benefit of doing this that I want to highlight is that I did mention All Saints utilization is through the roof. And by making this change is going to help slightly, like it's not solving the overall problem here, but it will free up a little bit of space just to help with the regular enrollment of people at school. You know, with that, I see Superintendent John McDonald has showed his face on this call, and so I'm going to turn it over to him and see if he wants to interject anything here. Go ahead, Superintendent McDonald.
Thank you, Dr. Zumwalt, and through the chair. At this point, Trustee Williams, the Spanish program would still operate out of Bishop Grandin, and we are looking at it, of course, depending on what numbers we have there. It does run a little bit differently in that sense, and we are looking at options, and I would agree with what Dr. Zumwalt stated earlier. To answer Trustee D'Souza's question around the CBE, they do have a French immersion program in the South that I believe runs out of Ernest Manning. We did look at that in relation to this decision, and out of the concern that we may be losing students to the new CBE school that runs in the Deep South. But at this point in time, the CBE does not run a French immersion program in the Deep South. So the school that would be running their extended French would be fairly close to Bishop Grandin. And again, the real reason for this adjustment was to make sure that we have the ability to grow the French immersion program further, but also make sure that we have one really robust program as we continue on the program in the future.
Does that answer your question, Trustee Williams?
Well, I do agree. Like, I have no problem with what's happening with the French immersion, but also because the Spanish program is growing, is that are we going to have the facility to accommodate that as well? Because as said, at this point in time, from what I know of it, is we have St. Benedict, then it's St. Bonaventure, then it's Bishop Grandin. So, you know, are we running both? Are we giving them the same sort of emphasis, I guess is what I would use, on making sure that we're growing those programs?
And if I can, I believe that the response was there's a degree of confidence that both programs can be accommodated as they are at Bishop Grandin. Did I hear that correctly? Yeah.
That's correct, Chair Martin. The challenge we face with the Spanish program in the South is the uptake of students at the high school level. It is strong, K-6. It does fall off in the secondary, in Division 3 and Division 4. So it would continue to run, but it is something that we're continually monitoring as it moves forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the clarity.
I have no further hands up. I would like to, though, as the trustee for the ward, express my appreciation for the challenge. You know, it really underscores how dynamic that sector of the city is. We're just into the third year of operation, I believe, of All Saints. We're needing to modify programs there so that there is capacity at a school that's already bursting at the seams. I think that the best decision that could have been made, given all circumstances, has been made. I do want to touch briefly on a comment that was made by Chief Superintendent Zumwalt regarding requests for information of administration. And I think that this is probably something that warrants further conversation. I'm not sure that it warrants policy revision, but I think that we all need at this particular time to be really cognizant of asks of a variety of types of information. We all have constituents who are interested, and for the information is important. But at this particular time of year, when everything that's being dealt with is being dealt with, it is a draw on the time of our administration, and I know that our trustees will be respectful of that. Thank you for that. That'll allow us to move on to 8.5, which is summer school planning. Back to the chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to begin by thanking Superintendent Andrea Haloka, who leads up our summer school, and have had numerous conversations with Superintendent Haloka. And I want to take everyone back in time. Last summer, we offered summer school. We were the only metro school district that offered face-to-face summer school programming in a world of COVID-19, if you recall. And that St. Francis High School was on the very last day where we dealt with our very first case of COVID-19 in the district. Moving forward to this year, and we did that last year, is because we know that the best instruction happens face-to-face, and diploma exams were mandated. So we wanted to give those students an opportunity to really excel on their exams. So as we go forward to this year coming up, we're going to pull back, and we're only going to be offering online programming for summer school with a whole myriad of courses at the different grade levels. We see this as a real opportunity. This is an opportunity for two reasons. Number one, to provide flexible programming for our students, which is fantastic. But also number two is the government is still going to be funding summer school through the old funding way of CEUs. So we have an opportunity to, we talk about generating revenue, like this is one way we can generate revenue as a school district going forward. We also are now going to be in alignment with the maximum number of courses a student can take. So they can take up to 10 credits. In the past, that number has been lower. Superintendent Haloka, can you help me out here? What was the previous number of credits in the past?
It was 8. So we allowed students to take 5 in a in-person or online synchronous course, and then they could take 3 in an online course that happened asynchronously, like a CALM course.
Thank you so much. And so we're making the change now so that students could take 2 5-credit courses to a maximum of 10 credits, which would result in, that's great for them. They're going to be really happy about that. And it has some benefits for us as well, because it's going to result in more funding, but it may also result in more space at their high school, because they're now moving through their high school programming a little bit faster as well. So there has a whole bunch of benefits for us as we move forward. Last thing, there is an additional cost savings, because we now don't have to invest money to keep the sites operational, so electricity and all of that other kind of thing, because those students are not going to be in those classrooms, which is a good benefit as well. So I'll pause, and if there's any questions for Superintendent Haloka or myself.
I have Trustee, oh, hang on just a second. I've got a few here. Trustee Williams, Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Ivanelli, Trustee Rath. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want clarity on one item. So we're going to be completely online, and those students that are leaving grade 9 can apply for online programs as they go into grade 10. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then additional to that then, so our students that do the online programming, when they go forward, when it comes to getting their schedules done for their school year, if they do these credits during that summer, then they're going to end up with time available to take additional programs.
Yes and no. We are looking at our criteria right now. We don't want to have students have a multitude of unassigned time. And then there's that balance there too, because we know to get a high school diploma requires 100 credits. Many of our students are graduating from high school with 120 or more credits. And so the more credits they take, they're taking up more space in our schools. They're making our classes larger. So it's a complex thing, because on one hand, you don't want to reel them in and say, oh, you can't you can't further your knowledge. You can't take all these extra classes, right? So there's a delicate balance because the government hasn't defined, basic education, although they have defined, the criteria to receive a high school diploma. So, we're still working with that. And Superintendent Haloka, feel free to chime in and add to that if you want.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I think our students are getting a little bit more savvy, and they're really looking for opportunities to advance themselves in different ways. So, for example, they will certainly be taking advantage of summer school, not necessarily to put more coursework in, but to give themselves a spare during the regular year so that they can focus on doing better in the courses that they're taking during the regular year. And like Dr. Zumla said, that does take a little bit of load off of our high schools too. It might decrease some of our sizes of classes and so on, which is a bonus to our schools while giving more opportunities for students.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, basically our kids that are going into high school right now, they have this summer school opportunity. But for us, and I'm looking at it from the financial end now, that if they're doing the CEUs, whether it's summer school, online, whatever, is basically we will be funded regardless of how they do the program.
We get additional funding for summer school. So we are not funded by course during the regular school year any longer, but we are funded up to 10 CEUs for summer school. So we actually will receive additional funding by doing this.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that clarity.
And I have there was a quick update. There was a comment that the CBE school that had extended French was expanding. It said EP Scarlet. So just a quick update there. I've got Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Ivanelli, Trustee Rath. Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious to know what will be the total cost savings for moving it all online? Have we done any estimate on that? I was just curious to know about that.
The Chief.
We don't know exactly how much of a cost savings, but we do know like the actual sites, as I mentioned, where you're not going to be paying for electricity and having the students in the classroom. That's the biggest savings. Is it going to be significant? No, like it's not going to be so significant that we can, solve our budgetary problems. It's not like that, right? But we still are going to require teachers, whether the teachers are teaching online or in a classroom, it's still the same cost to us, same cost to principals, right? So the real savings is just the actual space in the schools. Caretakers in the summertime, they still work in the summertime because they're cleaning. So there's not a lot of savings there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Ivanelli, Trustee Rath, Trustee Lawman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So, for a matter of clarification purposes, no diploma exams. This summer school generates revenues because students will collect CEUs and will save revenue from not having a school open. I'm just not understanding from the perspective of student success and that face-to-face learning is optimal for our students, why it's all online.
The Chief.
Yeah, so right now we are projecting everything. We have our conversations with the medical officer of health and the new variant that is now getting more and more prevalent here in Alberta, that who knows what COVID is going to look like in the summer, but right now is where we do the registration and hiring and planning for summer school. So we had to make a decision, and we are siding with safety at this point in time. And so and we're going to be providing good programming because it's not an interruption of their learning. Summer school courses are so short, being 1 month, that if there is a case of COVID, we were so lucky that our one case of COVID last summer happened on the last day where it really didn't impact all the learning. But imagine if we're dealing with a case of isolation in summer school and the kids are at home for their 14 days. Well, that's half of the course right there. So we might as well start them off and have the nice continuity of learning and have it online where we know it's not going to be interrupted by positive COVID cases.
All right. Trustee Rath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So would teachers be providing these online courses? Would they be going into a school, like a congregated setting, like I guess it would be St. Gerard for St. Isidore or St. Francis, or do they teach from home?
So at this point in time, that hasn't been 100% decided. I would suspect it could be a blend of both. We would want the teachers to have a relationship with the principal. But once again, it really is going to depend on where we're at with COVID, because if COVID is really rampant, we may do it all from home. And so we know that our teachers have done a good job from home. We know that they've done a good job from school as well. But if they're going to be in the classrooms using the power and the electricity, then that's that savings I talked about. We wouldn't have that savings, but it's not huge savings anyway. So I would say let's just wait and see and let our administrators figure that out. And it's really going to depend where we're at with COVID as we move forward. So I wish I had a definitive answer for you, but it's one of those COVID related things. We're going to have to wait and see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just to be clear, we have always made money with summer school, right? I mean, just because we're going to be going online doesn't mean all of a sudden we're going to be making money. We've always made money with summer school, correct?
We have, but we may be making, not maybe, we anticipate we will be making more money because we're increasing the courses from 8 CEUs to the government allows us to, they'll fund up to 10. And so that's an additional, additional advantage for us when it comes to money, for sure. Yeah.
And do you anticipate that more students will actually, because they can take study online, may enroll into summer school? So we'd be increasing our capacity?
That is yet to be determined, especially with all of the online learning and COVID. There may be some fatigue and people may not want to do any more online learning. So, we'll want to open up our registration process here soon. And so then we'll have a better idea. And Superintendent Holoka, feel free to chime in here. What are your thoughts on if we're going to have larger numbers or not?
Yeah, I mean, everything's very hard to predict right now. I do think we will have some students looking to take advantage of this, as this, we know that diplomas will not be required in the summer. So some who, have test anxiety or fear taking diplomas might participate in summer school more so than they normally would, just to sort of have that opportunity to opt out of the diploma. So that might spur some people on. And to be honest, if there's not a whole lot to do for kids, they might opt into learning in the summer, which is not a bad thing either, at least providing opportunities for students to learn. And some of them have had a pretty rough year from learning. Right. And they need that opportunity to either, take the course again or have the opportunity to free up their schedule to really focus on what they need to excel in the next year.
Okay, and I guess just one other query or concern. I don't think you're going to be able to answer it because it's one of those hypotheticals, I guess, but I don't think it's going to take the government long to recognize that there's some operational savings to school boards with online learning. And while it may be small, it's still a savings, and we have a government that is really strapped for cash. Are we prepared should they decide to lower the POM grant?
To the chief.
Yes.
Good answer.
Yeah, I have Trustee Williams.
Actually, Superintendent Kishan-Chandani is here. Let's let him reply to that. Go ahead, Superintendent Kishan-Chandani.
Thank you, Dr. Zoomless. Madam Chair, yes, there is every possibility that the ministry will be looking at these various elements, as Trustee Wellman very rightly pointed out. So what comes forth in the budget, and one of the other dynamics is with the students having shifted to online learning, the capacity utilization of our schools is down because those very students, although they're getting funded in online, the capacity utilization is the parameter that actually drives our POM funding. So we're trying to make a case to them. We went into online learning for a particular reason. So again, a variety of possibilities there, and we'll just have to wait till end of February.
Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, because I've been thinking about this and I thought, okay, so a student, let's just take one student. So we have a student that is doing online credits, and you've said that it's up to 10, but could they cross over and not only go into our online service, but go into CBE's and do 10 on theirs and 10 on ours? Like, is that possible? Because I'm going to guess they're going to offer the same kind of programming we are. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If that occurs, then could this crossover? Because as I said, I'm guessing they're going to offer the same thing. How is that going to be done? Like, can it be done? I guess is the first question.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. No, it can't be done because every student is registered in PASI, and so they have a student ID number. And so as they register for different courses, I believe it's not possible through the PASI program, or then funding it is going to get red flagged. We have had some students who, like CBE students, who take Calgary Catholic summer school. And I suspect we've probably had some Calgary Catholic students who have registered in some of the CBE stuff, but not so much that way. I think there's been more the other way in CBE students trying to take advantage of some of our programming in the summer. And Superintendent Haloka, can you please confirm if I was totally wrong on that? You just tell me and I will beg forgiveness, but go ahead.
Well, thanks for prefacing it that way, because yeah, they could take courses with us and another board at the same time. And because we're CEU funded in the summer, we're just funded for the ones they take with us. I would put money on the fact that they're not going to want to take 10 credits with us and 10 with CBE. That's a huge course load. That would be like double normal course load for any student. That'd be like going to school all day and all night. So I think it's pretty safe to say, by offering the ability for them to take 2 full courses with us, it actually hedges our bets to retain them a little bit more. If we just offered 1 course, which is what we normally do, then some of them do leak over into other boards to take another course. And that's happened with ADLC and other boards that do a lot of virtual learning. They do participate that in the summer. But I think this actually retains more of ours to take them with us. So sorry, Dr. Zumlis.
No, that's fantastic.
Well, no,
that's why I have you on the team. Make me right. Anyone
I
speak?
I have to go back to, and I guess Linda and I don't know, I'm not sure if Mary was on the board at the same time, but with Linda and I, we had one person that was going to St. Anne's that completed, I can't remember how many credits now, it was outstanding. And, you know, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, we can do this online thing, they can get their credits, but then it does come down to, you know, CUs and how that funding works. And you know, as you've been talking about what the go forward is on this, it sort of reminds me of this one lady that, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but she basically did 2 years in 1 year
And
to get her credits to graduate. And
yeah.
I think about that and I'm thinking, okay, so if we offer these programs, we get the funding for it, but then our students could do 2 districts. And
Trustee Williams, I think we have the answer for that through the chief, that with PASI it's not possible. I'd like to move us on. We still have the public agenda to get through, and we have some unfinished work. Seeing no further hands up, and trust to the chief, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, we need to clarify, because what I shared with you is incorrect information, and Superintendent Haloka corrected me on that one. So it is possible for, she indicated it is possible for a student to take some courses with us and some courses with CBE. I still would like to know, and this could be a question for Narin to research for fully, that is it the 10, like the 10 credits, is it a student can only take 10, or a district will only get funded for the 10? And so we need to get clarification on that. But what I want to highlight what Superintendent Haloka said, it's just not physically possible. There's not enough hours in a day for a student to take 10 with us and 10 with CBE. It's not possible, because these are half-day courses. Yeah.
And that's a fairly speculative question in any case, and beyond the scope of our meeting. What I would like to do is move us along and to item 8.6, cognizant of everyone's time and the notion that we have unfinished business to continue it. To the chief, item 8.6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So before you, what you see is the plan for our Racial Justice Committee. I think it's, I want to thank Liaison of Arts and Culture, Holly Sheely, and her committee that consists of one staff member from every single site. And I say site, not just school. So, central office, everyone is part of this committee. And you can see that it's a 3-year plan, and they've called year 1 is starting the conversation. You could read the bullets there. Year 2 is hearing the conversation. I want to highlight in year 2, hearing the conversation that's where we want to do more work with parent trustee forums and really getting our school councils involved. This year is more about getting our staff up to date and our staff educated. We can't forget about students. Students are woven into this plan throughout all 3 years. We know that coming up in February is Black History Month, so that's just right around the corner next week, and a lot of work has been going into that. But if you look at the title page, and I want to focus on the image of the hands and the heart and the cross, and I want to share with you the symbolism behind that logo that has been produced by Calgary Catholic. So there's 7 hands, and the number 7 is very symbolic in our Indigenous communities, and the 7 teachings, which are love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. The hands represent our Black, Indigenous, mixed race, and the people of color. All hands are connected, and we need to be connected to each other to do this work and to have impact and to implement positive change. We cannot do this alone. Everything is placed in a circle to represent the approach many of our cultures take when sharing and talking, to see and to hear, and to find solutions when there's conflict, or to be joined together for celebration. A circle is never ending, and it reminds us that the work is continual and constant. Surrounded and layered on top is blue and blue, which is symbolic of and can represent images of the sky and the sea, and which show no bounds. And spirituality signifies the healing power of God. It's also a color of bravery and dedication. Blue represents introspective journeys and symbolizes wisdom and depth of understanding. And at the center of the heart, which represents love. And where there is love, there is God. And finally, the cross and the heart to show that we are all grounded in our faith as we do the work of racial justice. So, that's what I just read to you is the amazing work that's being done by the committee. And I just love hearing that story around that logo for racial justice. Any questions or comments on this one?
There we go. I have, hang on just a sec. Trustees Rath, Trustee D'Souza, Trustee Wellman, Trustee Rath.
Absolutely fast question, Madam Chair. At the last trustee forum, there was some talk about Black History Month and a resource on the website. I was wondering if that was done and if there is a link to that and if that could be shared with trustees. And that's the only question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really joined with us this evening in the call is Director of Communications and and Community Relations, Tanya Von Brunt. I was talking to Tanya about this earlier in the week. Lots of work has gone into the development of the resource site. As we've shifted to our new website, I've asked people for patience because it's huge. That's a huge undertaking in itself. And we're quite pleased where we've landed. And I know I'm going to call out Tanya if she's actively listening in the call. Do we know if we have an active link yet?
I believe I am here. I believe it is on the list of things to do. And from the last I heard is it would be completed by Friday.
Okay. So I know, thank you, Tanya. I know Holly and Tanya were talking about this. There is a link that is working for staff, and staff needed that link because they're planning all the activities and gearing up for Black History Month, and they're feeling really good about where they're landing. But there's some information that is more specific to staff and not specific to the world out there. It may be misinterpreted or used in the wrong way. So Holly and Tanya, they're working on separating what is the stuff that we want to open up in the World Wide Web on our front-facing website. So they're working that out, and hopefully we'll have something, like Tanya said, by the end of the week. And then we would, Tanya, we need to communicate that back to school councils as well, just as a follow-up.
Yes, that'll be happening.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I really have to compliment Chief Superintendent Zoomless and his team for creating this phenomenal world with the hands. And the way you described it, that's very touching. And it's going to be the envy of a lot of people when you describe it the way you did. I could see there's been a lot of thought and effort that's gone into it. So thank you very much. I have 3 questions. When I look at the year 1, year 2, and year 3, are you going to be fleshing it out more in terms of what would it look like in terms of when you say educate district employees? What would that be? A PD, a full day PD, ongoing, how many sessions, what kind of sessions? So I'm just wondering if each of these bullet points will be further fleshed out. The second question is that CBE is also working very diligently on this racial justice as a result of the Floyd issue. And I was wondering if we've considered working together with them and seeing what they're doing and how we could, take some of the best practices. I know we're very different from them, but that's the second question. And the third one is that I believe CBE has 2 trustees on their advisory councils, and could that be considered, or is that a consideration?
To the chief, and then we have Trustee Wellman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so as for fleshing it out, yes, Holly has created this with her committee as a very succinct, short for people wanting to know kind of what Calgary Catholic is about. But as for the actual details, like we have lots going on. For example, we've created courses that are going to be rolled out to our staff. And it will be an expectation that they all complete the course and write a little exam and are educated in racial justice going forward. So yes, we are fleshing it out. As for CBE, I talked to Chris Yusi, who's the chief superintendent there. We are not partnering with them. And one of the main reasons is our theoretical framework, which is creative conversations about race. We also have a Catholic lens on things. And so to partner with a non-Catholic school jurisdiction on something like this, we wouldn't be able to talk about our faith as we do that work with them. So that's the main sticking point for that. And I think, Calgary Catholic has a long history of doing things, really well. And so we're in good hands with we have lots of hands and hearts and minds that have joined this committee. So we're not short or needing other people to help us do the good work. And of course, we have Dr. Lance Dixon at St. Mary's University who's helping us with that. And the last thing, as for a trustee being part of this or on the committee at this point in time, that's something that we haven't asked for at this point. I guess it comes down to operations versus governance, and why would a trustee be part of that? Like, is that a governance role? At this point, I don't really see that, but if I'm missing that, then you guys can help me out. And if I have missed it, I'd be more than willing to have a trustee on there for that reason, if there was a governance role related to racial justice. But, you guys can talk about that and give me direction as to what you would like to see.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I believe that question has come up before and it has been answered. And thank you for sharing that perspective. I have Trustee Wellman and Trustee Ivanelli.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And certainly thank you for the report. And, it seems like a really short report, but I know that there's a whole huge amount of work that needs to be done. And, and I appreciate, you saying that, we're not partnering with CBE or anyone really that wouldn't have the understanding and looking through that lens of our faith. That being said, every one of our schools are supposed to be Catholic community of caring school. When we started that program eons ago, it was invitational, and now every school is a Catholic community of caring school. Embedded within the Catholic community caring are the core values that include faith, which is where we all are made in the image and likeness of God, and of course, respect. And I'm just wondering if we're missing an opportunity, especially when it comes to the teachings to our students, where we should be maybe embedding and include some of the focus of racial justice within those core values of the Catholic community of caring. It's just a thought. Like, sometimes I think we reinvent the wheel, and we have so many resources that are at our disposal, and we just need to change them to reflect what our realities are. Appreciating that there's still a lot of work to do with the conversations about language and how we speak, and educating staff, and staff selection, role models for students, and all that stuff. But that was just one of the things that really struck a chord with me when I was going through this, is we have so much that we could be doing and aren't.
Thank you for that observation. To the Chief, and then I have Trustee Ivanelli, and then we'll move on.
So, Madam Chair and Trustee Wellman, I'm not sure if you saw under the data section of this report on page 3 at the end of the second paragraph, I'll read the sentence. A foundational focus on the pillars of our Catholic community of caring, faith, caring, respect, responsibility, trust, and family would be at the forefront of this work. So this is definitely, I'm a strong believer in what you're talking about. We're not making another layer, but there is close working relationships that's happening between Catholic Community of Caring and Holly's committee and at the school level. So it's all coming together like that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I've got Trustee Ivanelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was brought to us as information. I'd just like to call a point of order, as we have quite a bit of information, points to go through, work to get done during this meeting. To say, I don't appreciate this extensive work, and I am complete trust in the Chief that he's doing a fabulous job with the racial justice. But I think, given the time, I think we should move along and back into our private portion to finish our work.
Thank you. I appreciate your point of order. However, given that this is the first presentation of documentation that provides a 3-year plan, there is a great deal of relevance to governance, and I think it is appropriate for trustees to bring governance-related questions. I will ask trustees to confine their questions to those that are related to governance, and I would like to express our appreciation as well to our Chief Superintendent for breathing life into something that is centrally important to us all. It's a beautiful document, and through the Chief, please pass on our appreciation to Holly for the outstanding work that she's done. That will bring us to the last piece of our public meeting, 8.7, Calgary Catholic ranks number 1 in education data use. To the Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just something to celebrate. If you were to look at the chart, So a couple years ago, we switched over to this network. So as our students are accessing information, they're accessing it on Canada's research network. And what is the highlight here is there's only a couple K-12 institutions that are in the top of this list, and Calgary Catholic is at the very top of all K-12 institutions, even above CBE, which is next on the list. And what is also interesting to note that we're ahead of the University of Calgary in our usage, as well as University of Lethbridge. So quite impressive. Just look at the amount of data that's passing through our internet portals and into the minds of our students and our staff as we go forward. So this is a huge thank you to Superintendent John McDonald and Director John Shute and their technology team here in Calgary Catholic for their foresight in utilizing an exceptional piece of technology to help our students succeed.
Thank you. And thank you for providing this information. I will invite trustees if there are questions or comments related to this. Okay, seeing none, then to the chief, sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Actually,
sorry.
I did put my hand up.
Okay, Trustee Williams.
And I'm not sure because I know that I've gone off video. So you're just not seeing my hand is not blue, it's yellow.
Your question is?
But no, I just want to commend our administration staff, because when I saw this, and I do a lot of webinars and such, but I have to say it is kudos to our administrative staff and the work that they do, because this may seem like a little thing, but it's not. This is telling me that our administration has worked hard to ensure that links that children can have or staff can have that go into this kind of webinar use is important, and that we're getting the message out. So I give huge kudos to our administration for the work they're doing.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further hands up. What I would like to do is conclude this by again expressing our appreciation for the work that the district does. And clearly this is really noteworthy. And again, through the chief to Superintendent McDonald, this is reflective of some really important work that Calgary Catholic does do. And it's actually really relevant as we look to using technology more and more as we educate our kids from K through 12. And it will, I think, continue to be an important part of our conversations going forward. I'm seeing no further hands up, so I will draw that piece of the meeting to a close. I know that we have some business to conclude. We will take a recess, but we will, Trustee Ivanelli, you've got a motion to bring forward. If we can dispense with that, and then we will.
Madam Chair, just before we do that, can I make a correction here?
Sure.
When I thanked the wrong McDonald. I should thank MacDonald. So Superintendent Brad McDonald, who's our IT guy, but apparently my staff are telling me that I said John McDonald. So we need to make sure we're thanking the right person here. And so Brad, it's really Brad's team who does all the IT work. So thank you, Brad.
Thank you for that. And to Trustee Ivanelli.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Trustees directs the board chair to add a detailed discussion on student recognition to the agenda of a future special board meeting agenda.
Thank you. I would propose, if I can, just an amendment. It was student and staff.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would see that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. And I can't see the whole screen. If anybody could verbalize if they have any objections to that being a friendly amendment.
Madam Chair, if I could, I have no problems with saying student and staff. I don't know if you can add a detailed discussion though. Discussion is left up to the participants that are in the meeting. And I'm just wondering if it just directs the board chair to add it as an agenda item, student and staff recognition, or add to a special.
Let's dispense with student and staff first, Trustee Wellman. I'm not hearing an objection to that being friendly. So we'll consider that a friendly amendment. Does anyone object to the word detailed being stricken? Hearing none.
Trustee Lowe has her hand up, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I can't see it because the screen's on. So Trustee Lowe.
Yeah, I don't object to that, but I think that this is specific to the district celebration and recognition because schools do their own type of recognition, and that's not what we're delving into.
Okay.
So I think that needs to be clear that the Board of Trustees direct the board chair to add a discussion on district
Student and staff recognition.
Yeah, because we're not here to talk about what individual schools are doing, if I understood correctly.
All right, perfect. Does anyone see that as anything other than friendly? Speak now.
I would insert the word "the" and make it would be the district, because I think that makes it very clear what we're talking about.
All right, the district.
Yeah.
Any opposition to that? Speak now. All right, seeing none.
Again?
Yeah, read it again, Trustee Ivanelli.
Okay, I move that the Board of Trustees directs the board chair to add a discussion on the district student and staff recognition to the agenda of a future special board meeting.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Okay, I'm going to call the question, but I'm going to I'll go around the table. There we are. That's better. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried. All right, that concludes the business of our public portion of the meeting. We do need to revert back to conclude some outstanding business. I will thank those who have participated to this point, and I will ask for a motion to move back to in private.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees moves to meet in private.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. All right, we will do so. And in a public meeting, if I can have a motion.
Madam Chair?
Yep. Trustee Wellman?
Yes, I would move that. I'm just looking for my motion. Sorry. I sent it to Omar. Just a sec. I can get it.
It's on the screen.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees directs the board chair to write the Ministers of Education, Infrastructure and Finance, advising of CCSD's desire and rationale to submit 2 capital plans identifying infrastructure needs for Calgary City and the cities of Airdrie, Chestermere and Cochrane.
Thank you. Friendly amendment, City of Calgary, uppercase C for city.
I think, yeah, I said Calgary City because I just wanted to,
right.
Yeah, but yeah. It's not a hill to die on.
Thank you. Is there anybody who would see that as not friendly? Hearing nothing. Trustee Lowe?
Yeah, so it's, did we determine that Cochrane is a town still?
It is a town.
And it's cities of Airdrie, city of Chestermere, town of Cochrane, and the surrounding areas, because we have, when it's the Rocky View district, like we have a third municipality that we
the MD and the county, you're correct.
Or you want to put the surrounding areas, or do you want to put and Rocky View County?
I think we should
Rocky
say
View County.
But I guess we don't have schools in those places.
We don't, but we serve some of the students.
Yeah.
All right. Friendly amendment. Anybody opposed to that?
Madam Chair, I just want something of clarity here.
Yep.
And that would be that there's going to be a covering letter that explains why we're doing this.
Well, that's what this letter is doing. This letter is asking for permission, for lack of a better word, to do this. That's what this letter is. And they'll either say yes or no.
I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
All righty. Seeing no further comments, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion's carried. All right, then that brings us back to Trustee Ivanelli, who can close this meeting with a prayer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could join me with the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Dear Holy Father, Please help us to use faith as an instrument to guide us in our everyday lives. Following Abraham's example, lead us to the holy path in which you have planned for us. Give us hope to move forward during challenging times in which we struggle. Throughout our journey, ensure that you will guide us and make us feel loved and secure. During these unfortunate times, help us proceed with strength and faith in you. For those who are persecuted for their differences, we pray that they embrace those unique traits as a gift. And for those who have suffered natural disasters, please guarantee that you bestow your love and care. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
And I would just like to say, sorry, that was a prayer from this very beautiful gift, again, from a student at St. Gregory's School, a grade 7 student. And thank you so much for this prayer book. I love it.
It's lovely. It is. And thank you for that. And before I'll adjourn this meeting adjourned, but thank you everyone for your attention. This one was a corker and a grind, and a lot of important decisions have been made tonight. And it's not always easy work, but it's important work. And I just want to thank everyone for their efforts and for their attention. It's been a long haul. And with that, we'll sign off, and I'll get busy actioning some of these motions.
Thank you,
Take
Madam
care,
Chair.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Brian, for all you do.
All good. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, John and Tanya, Teresa, Marion, Omar.